One. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tower of Babble podcast. As always, I'm Julian Mush. I'm joined by Daniel D'Souza.
What's up?
And we have Jeremy Cozier, alt on my far left, next to Dan, dressed as a Green Lantern still. But that actually is more appropriate than it has been since the last time we talked about his Snyder Cut. So it is. And that's a good question. That's more of a question Dan would ask, I think, because he actually has no idea. The best part of doing the podcast with Dan is that he has no clue what the news is going to be.
I like to improvise on these shows.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, what are we going to talk about today? First of all, we like to talk about the latest in film and television news. There hasn't been a lot of that until recently. It's kind of been slowly ramping back up, just like, unfortunately, coronavirus is in the States.
Right.
So what that means,
than the other.
Right? But what that means for film production and stuff, unclear at this time. Anyway, what are we going to be talking about today? There's tons of DC news and some pretty crazy stuff, actually, like some stuff you wouldn't expect. Then the AMC Theaters saga continues, and there's actually more Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles news also than you'd expect.
Oh, great! Yeah,
which
cool.
I know you don't care about, but I do, and I know and because I do, and I put the show notes together, I get to dictate that. But there's a bunch of other stuff. There's lots to talk about. Even some news about Quibi, and it's not just the thing you showed me either.
Oh, okay, cool.
So we'll get to that. So there's a fun little game I have to play with you guys halfway through the show. Okay, so let's jump into it. Before we do, though, I just want to mention that we would like if you follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast as well. If you have thoughts about the show, ideas, we're gonna play a fun game later. If games like that you want to see us play, towerofbabblepodcast@gmail.com. That's where you're gonna get a hold of us. We also have a Patreon to help support the show. It's patreon.com/towerbabblecast. It's $5 a month. You get access to our movie club. Dan, what was the last movie we did?
We just did Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which was a great experience for me. Less so for you guys.
I didn't really enjoy it.
I was very pleasantly surprised, having seen it when I was much younger. I enjoyed it more this time.
It's right up your alley, though. It's like a movie made for you.
It's designed for
you. What's the movie next month? Or this month, I guess.
This month we're doing Boiler Room. It's it is nice. It's a relatively obscure film, but very well done. In my opinion, Julian, you haven't seen it, right?
Sorry, I just read a very funny comment from Don. Sorry. Sorry, Dan, what was the question?
I can't concentrate. Have you seen, you've seen Boiler Room or no?
I've seen Boiler Room.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you guys made me watch it.
Okay, well, we're doing that again this month, so.
Okay, so that'll be fun. That's why I've never got to watch it on my own free will, so that's interesting. Sorry, so we have two people in Twitch chat right now. We have Marcos, friend of the show. Hey, Marcos. Hope you're staying safe as well. And then it was dual agenda, I guess, kind of. Egenda 25. He says, "Do you think Jim Henson ever used Kermit the Frog as an oven mitt?" I couldn't keep it together. That's a great question, and it's funny you ask. We'll be talking about that later this evening. No, I don't know, but probably. So, what are the movies we're going to be talking about? Some of the movie news we're going to be talking about. I already mentioned some, but we'll start with the most predictable, I think, of the stories this week, which is Christopher Nolan's Tenet has been pushed back again, this time to mid-August. The question, I guess, is, do we think it'll actually stick mid-August? My prediction is it won't.
I don't think so either. I think this is going to get pushed quite a bit.
I saw a funny tweet today saying he should have pushed Tenet to summer of 2019.
I mean, it's really, really difficult to say, but like that becomes more of like a cultural question than it is like our area of expertise.
Right.
But, like, things aren't going well in some places in the world, and that it's going to be closely tied into whether or not movies release. So
it's going most poorly in one particular place where most movies are made.
For sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And are consumed, actually. Well, that's not true. The worldwide box office is bigger than the American box office, but it is a huge chunk. Dan's dancing around it, but yeah, the virus situation in the States is not great, and it means likely that theaters won't be reopening, and that any freedoms that the kind of reopening, quote unquote, that they were having may actually be pulled back a little bit. I know the theaters are hoping to be have been open already, But that's obviously not the case. And we'll talk about some things that AMC is doing in that regard in a little bit. It's pretty funny actually. I just think it's like if you look at it as like almost I was gonna say like a Shakespearean comedy. Like it's kind of got some tragedy a little bit in it.
Okay.
You know, and it just as a whole, their whole whatever they're doing. I don't know who's running that company, but they should re-examine that whenever they get out of this, if they ever get out of this. So, sticking with Warner Brothers for a second, Jason Momoa, I think it was on his. Jeremy, you're gonna have to help me. I'm gonna pitch to you in a second, but Jason Momoa on I think his Instagram revealed a teaser trailer for the Snyder Cut. It was. It's pretty short. I think it's like only 20 seconds or something like that. Features Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman looking at like a mural of what looks like Darkseid, and you have Lex Luthor narrating it, and then it cuts to what looks like Darkseid.
Just creating some havoc.
Right. So, Jeremy, do you have any more on this story?
I mean, it's a short teaser, but I think
right.
I think people, from what I've seen and what I kind of feel, is that it kind of just showcases how different the tone is going to be. Just a lot more like dark, grim even.
Sure.
So that's kind of cool to see, you know what I mean? Like just based off the news that we're getting this thing finally, and the teaser here is very minimal, but it really shows you that it's going a different direction than the theatrical cut for sure.
Well, yeah, I think those two scenes are entirely new, which I think is an interesting choice, and it's smart because that's what people want to see.
That's exactly why I even wanted a Snyder Cut.
Right. I mean, it's hard. Yeah, like you're right, Jeremy. There's not much to really say about a 20-second trailer. I think it's interesting that we got one so soon, considering it's not coming for a little bit yet, and it was just announced only about a month ago. So, if this is any sign of what's to come, and it's just kind of, I guess, similar to how Zack Snyder's kind of done his marketing in the past, which is uses actors and actresses to kind of like help hype things up a bit, but then he also likes to like drip things slowly, like these kind of more than you'd expect, right? So he'll give you this 20-second trailer, which is more than you expect, but then he'll give you like little pieces here and there. Like I think of back with Batman versus Superman, we had like that first shot of Batman next to the Batmobile, and it's like, wow, that's a lot to give as your first bit of information. And then it was all we had for a long time, but then it's like slowly picked up. So maybe we're gonna get more of this kind of stuff as we get closer. I know HBO's probably thinking like, sweet.
We'll ramp up.
We have a great crush in the chat as well today. What's up? How's it going? By the way, we are live. I should mention this.
That's crush too.
You think?
For sure, yeah.
Lime crush.
I mean, cream soda is classic, but I like grape.
I don't like drinking it as anything other than a Slurpee, and then as a Slurpee, only lime crush was like my thing. So
That's a mistake.
yeah, probably. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so we're live. You can watch us live on YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, and Facebook. If you subscribe to any of us on those places, you'll get notifications when we go live. But the best place to stay tuned with that kind of stuff is Twitter. Well, I'll mention it a little bit early before we do go live. All right, so sticking with DC for a bit here, like I said, there's quite a few things to talk about. So I guess one of the largest of which being that Henry Cavill, he's been doing a press tour lately. I don't remember for what movie, and he's basically been talking about how he's not ready to give up the cape. And there was rumors even a month ago about him coming back to the role. We had largely kind of thought that he was done with it after Justice League and how poorly that kind of came out and was received. And you think of the Shazam cameo where the top of his head isn't really even in it, but it's not even him, to be fair. It's a different actor. People wanted him to reshoot that, by the way, which doesn't really make any sense. So there's a lot of kind of smoke, and I guess there was some fire there. So looks like wants to return. There's no actual news on what project that would be. There's no, as far as we understand, there's no Man of Steel like direct sequel in the works. There really isn't anything else that Superman would be leading. If he would be returning, it would probably be the newest, the most latest one would probably be in a Flash movie or in some other smaller role, cameo role in another DC movie. Jeremy,
And that was the rumor, like I don't know, 3 weeks ago, a month ago.
Yeah,
Was that
it was about a month.
that he's back, but it's gonna be in minimal roles or whatever, which is still kind of cool. I don't know. I'd like to see it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Superman until Warner Brothers understands or figures out what to do with Superman, using him in a sparingly in smaller roles is the best use of him, I think. Okay, so Jeremy, I thought you'd be more excited about this just because I feel like you were championing him staying on, and we were trying to figure out what was going on.
I mean, I feel like it was kind of already confirmed about a month ago. Like,
sure.
I think he still has to dance around the questions he's asked, and that's what he's kind of leading it astray a little bit. But I think it's already been confirmed a while ago.
Again, this is a kind of a broader question, which just opens up the kind of the question generally, but do we want Henry Cavill back as Superman, or would you have preferred them to kind of maybe go a different direction with Warner Brothers kind of trying to take maybe the DC movies in another different direction?
Maybe at some point during the last few years where we didn't know what was kind of happening, and especially since the universe they built was basically dead, apart from certain actors that are continuing on officially, like Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, Jason Momoa's Aquaman, even Ezra Miller's Flash. But then obviously with the recent news with the Snyder Cut coming, and just what they're going to be doing with that, which is a lot. Like, they're going to put a lot of effort into this thing. So I think we have to wait till that happens, because there's tons of people running stories about Ben Affleck right now.
Sure.
Trying to say that he wants back on, that AT&T.
Do you believe that?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. Like, we don't. It's just rumors. But the thing is, if this Snyder Cut, ends up being hugely successful, and you never know, right? Like, we have to
sure.
that.
I feel like we've had this conversation a million times.
Yeah, I think it's smart right now though to keep Henry Cavill in the mix, because then you have to go at that point.
Yeah. Well, right. Assuming we can get Ben Affleck back, which I don't know.
But if you have to
to
pick one, you pick Henry Cavill.
Right. I think. Yes. I would agree with that. Dan, any other thoughts on this?
No, I was just saying. I feel like we've had this conversation a million times. That they're obviously negotiating contracts at one point, and there's a lot of rumors on both sides. I definitely would rather see Henry Cavill in the role than anyone else at this point.
Right.
I'd rather them at least see it through, maybe another Justice League movie, and hopefully do a better job with it. But you know what I mean? Like, I want to maintain the same people as long as we can.
I would be okay with them being kind of like finally the last performance of them being together is as a Flashpoint movie. And then
just
hitting the reset button. But then you can pick and choose at that point what you want to reset.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. And I think that I would be okay with that. So here's the thing. Here's the twist. Right. So we're talking about characters returning to roles, specifically ones that we thought were done with them for a long time. Right. A rumor that's been buzzing, and there's been a little bit more smoke to this. There's no evidence that it's true or not yet, but. One of the rumors is that the Green Lantern cameo in the Snyder Cut is in fact Ryan Reynolds in the role.
No, come on.
And apparently he's wanted to come back for a while, but this might be wishful thinking from fans. It might be one of those things where people are trying to make it.
It's got to be one of those, like, they're trying to maybe redeem that movie too,
right.
Like, give him a second shot, because he was very passionate about the role at the time, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously the movie didn't perform very well, but if he could take the role again and do it well.
He also did mention the Snyder Cut like multiple times throughout the last few years in random interviews, whether it be a joke or whatnot. He made it like that he knew.
It's that one's a weird one because it's so separate from even the DC stuff that came before the Justice League, right? Or came with the Justice League.
Yeah.
The last time that there was, and it's funny, it wasn't actually that long ago. The last time there was a reference to the DC or the Green Lantern DC movie, obviously DC movie, but the live action movie, was in the CW's Infinite Earths crossover. where they did like a shot of all the different Earths, and one of them was just a shot taken from the movie. They just used a scene from the movie of Oa.
Yeah.
So it's like it hasn't been that long since this has been kind of brought up. I don't know if that's the right way to go about it, but it would be an interesting way to do it. Especially Jeremy, I'm thinking kind of long term here. You want to like maybe forget about Hal Jordan for a while, and if you want to like bring him back in a rebirth type scenario. And kind of redeem the character that way and bring Ryan Reynolds back for that. That would be interesting, perhaps. And then maybe concentrate on the other Green Lanterns for now. And just kind of dance around who joined, Hal Jordan was or what happened.
So I guess, so the idea there, the pitch there is making the Green Lantern movie, the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie, technically canon and having like...
Well, no, it'd be one of those things where you just
parallax
wink at it. You just wink at it. So you just say like, was it canon? Like you could, if you, in your head canon, make it that way if you wanted, but you don't ever officially acknowledge those events. You just same actor, same character, but a different quote unquote universe. I think you could do it that way. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool, but I wouldn't care for it as a cameo, and that's all it is. You know what I mean? Like if it's a cameo, that means it would
like it has to
trying to make
be
it
more
to something more, or is it just a cameo that it's done with? Because I would be interested in seeing Reynolds bounce off of Ben Affleck's Batman or Cavill Superman. I think that would be cool. Like these are, actors kind of on the same level playing field
of stature. Yeah.
So it'd be cool to see them bounce off one another. But I don't know. I was already ready to get a completely new Hal Jordan or Green Lantern altogether.
Yeah.
So if you're Zack Snyder, do you believe this rumor, Jeremy? Do you think that's what's happening here? Do you actually anticipate that we'll see Ryan Reynolds in that role, or is this just one of those kind of those? This happens, by the way, all the time, which is fans just kind of trying to wish things into reality.
Yeah, I think it just adds to the whole nature of this whole Snyder Cut as just being too good to be true, and then you add this on top of it. It just makes it like an overwhelmingly like positive fanfare, just everyone is just like talking about and like celebrating almost. So
it's the only reason I'm willing to believe it, really. It's because the Snyder Cut is so unbelievable that it exists at all. I'm like, well, yeah, sure, this is crazy, but it's no crazier than I guess that being said, having Batman back would be just as crazy. I think at this point, Ben Affleck would, So
I don't know if you've seen him lately, but he's ripped. Right
does not look.
No, he's in great shape right now.
Oh, he's in great shape. I was like, you don't know if you've seen him lately. Does not look like him.
Last 2 years he was lost for sure.
Right.
He has found himself again. That is totally because of Anna de Armas, who he is.
You know what? I would do anything for Anna de Armas, so I understand that.
Right. You move along.
You wouldn't? Come on. You don't like Anna de Armas? Come on. Okay, so we're going from like one level of crazy to like the next level. So we're going up to level 3, crazy level 3. Right. Said I don't know that like we think it's like orange. Like what color do you think that is?
Yeah.
Be red.
So this, which is actually more substantiated than any of the other stuff, except for maybe the Henry Cavill thing, is that Michael Keaton is in talks to reprise his role as Batman for the Flash movie, and possibly other movies in the future. Yeah, exactly. For more than just that movie. Isn't that crazy?
I suppose it depends on what happens in what we're assuming is Flashpoint, right?
If you're doing this kind of stuff, because that, by the way, is also heavily rumored that Jeffrey Dean Morgan is going to be back as Thomas Wayne. Which I know you guys like so much, but he was barely in that movie.
It's just a cool concept more than anything else.
So, Dan, I guess I'll pass to you first on this. This is the first you're hearing of it. First, how do you think he would fit into a Flashpoint movie? And then the larger universe aspect.
So the first thing is, how serious is this, right?
Pretty serious.
Okay, so let's assume that it is serious and that's in an actual role. Because the idea of him having movies after the fact means that it's not just a cameo, that it's not just like they see other Earths and they see, oh, there's a Batman 89 Earth,
Right.
How do you do it? Yeah, of course, like Batman Beyond is going to be the first place where a lot of people go.
Great. See, that's interesting you went there, because the rumors are that he would be coming back as a like mentor type character.
Right.
later on, which may or may not be, as a Batman Beyond, which is where I prefer to see it. I think
that's the age of the actor, and it makes sense. Like, you could have a universe where the '89 Batman, and actually there is a universe where the '89 Batman did happen, and then he ages and eventually takes on proteges. I buy it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and then the idea of having movies after the fact, like following his character, I don't know. It would have to be following a different character.
I guess it would be more like I don't want to misquote anybody, but I think what I heard was that it would be in like a Nick Fury type role of like gathering, which is what Ben Affleck's Batman was doing in Justice League. But I think would be a little bit more behind the scenes kind of thing. There's the way you could do it is that you could have kind of a Flashpoint scenario where this version of Batman, Michael Keaton's version of Batman, somehow like is unaffected by it or like escapes it and like with the Flash, and then is brought into the new universe where there's already a different Batman. So you can have like a Batman conversation, which is we've seen before in the DC animated shows. You could do a Batman Beyond where there's a Terry McGinnis type situation. There's a lot of doors you can open with Michael Keaton as Batman. And by the way, Michael Keaton in the last couple of years has really leaned into his like having played Batman thing and like talks about it on a regular basis. He like closed it's so stupid. He closed a commencement speech at a university by saying, "There's only 2 words you need to remember. I'm Batman," and then walked away.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, I swear to God. You don't think? Dan, Jeremy, back me up here.
Yeah, I think he's done something like that.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Jeremy, what do you think of this?
I mean, I think it's also important to note that I think the rumor of Jeffrey D. Morgan and Michael Keaton are like, there's people shooting down that Jeffrey D. Morgan is a part of this as well.
Right, interesting.
So almost like they're making the story that it's one or the other, but they're more invested in getting Keaton because they think that it'll draw more of an audience than Jeffrey D. Morgan.
Well, I think that's fair. But then that's definitely true.
I'm a fan of Zack Snyder and what he built there. I think it'd be really cool to just get that actor in that role and see a different Batman, and
like a Thomas Wayne version.
Yeah. Because like everyone's sick of the origin of Batman, right? Like they never want to see it again. Like, okay, let's show it again, but then let's
show me those goddamn pearls one more time.
No, we're gonna show the scene that they filmed basically in Batman vs Superman, but then it's gonna end differently, and then it's just gonna kind of shock everyone. Then we go on to this alternate take that blows up the multiverse. So on one hand, I think it's really cool, but with Michael Keaton, I don't know. I think it's also like a bit too much for me. Like I don't know. It adds like a CW flair to it, like with their event episodes.
Sure.
Where like they just throw everything at it.
Yeah, it feels like a crossover, sort of like how they have Ezra Miller in the Flash series, or they have Kevin Conroy come on to do Batman and.
Sure.
Also,
I think it was also the same thing, but he played it.
With the tone of the
Kingdom Come.
The tone of the Flash movie they want to pull off here, like I mean, I guess it could work, right? It could be a really like fun movie, but I don't know.
I still don't love Ezra Miller as the Flash. I think that's from everything I've heard, he's the weakest element of the movie. So that's the most concerning for me, I guess, at this point. Whatever way they go, I think. If you're gonna do a Flashpoint movie, like go balls to the wall, and
the director said it's not gonna be like the comics, like they're taking the name and the general idea, but it's not gonna involve.
Right, it's the Age of Ultron thing.
Like, it's not gonna involve a lot of characters. Like if anything, it's probably just gonna be Batman.
The Batman stuff, which is, to be fair, the most interesting part of that whole Flashpoint series. Yeah. So, although. Second would be the Aquaman, Wonder Woman stuff.
Yeah, I like that kind of stuff. Then you would have to figure out something where the current Flash kind of protects the remaining members of the Justice League, right, from the Flashpoint.
Well, yes and no, because you can bring back the same actors; they just don't have to remember their previous life, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of like cheap if if everything's the same and then one thing is different, like Michael Keaton's the Batman or the Thomas Wayne's Batman, and everything else is exactly the same.
Well, I was saying it wouldn't be exactly the same, right? Like
having them come in, same actor in like a different outfit isn't exactly exciting to me.
Yeah, I guess. You want to keep the elements that work, right? People like Jason Momoa, people like Gal Gadot.
Right.
Wonder Woman 1884 looks like so good, and I can't wait to see that movie. But it keeps being pushed back. Who knows? It was supposed to be out last year. Like it's like that was a situation where, man, they should have pushed it to 2019 because that's a missed opportunity on that point. And by the way, is it Kathy Jenkins, the director? Jeremy,
Yeah.
help me out here.
Right.
She said that she threw out her scripts for Wonder Woman 3 because she was writing them in like a or in a pre-COVID world. Patty Jenkins, thank you. And she just feels like the climate of the world is very different, now than when she was writing it, and she wants to kind of reflect the nature of the new world, which I think is fair and interesting. But it'll be a long time before we see that movie anyway. So, okay, moving on. There are 2 DC animated movie trailers. We watched them before we started recording today. I don't know when each of them were revealed, to be honest, and I don't know when either of them are coming out. But I can look that up while you guys talk about it.
Well, Deathstroke was revealed a week or 2 ago, and I think it's coming out in August.
I will look up that right now. So, okay, do you want to start with Deathstroke?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so Deathstroke, let's say Knights and Dragons, and it's weird. The titling is weird because it's called Deathstroke, Knights and Dragons, the movie, which I don't know what that means. There's a possibility that this is a movie adaptation, or it's like they took, because I think there was an animated short series with Deathstroke, if I'm remembering correctly, and then maybe they've just condensed that and re-edited it into a film. That's possible, or it's an adaptation of a book of the same name that I'm not familiar with. But I think it's the first one. I'll look this up. But what do you guys think of that of the trailer just to begin with?
I gotta be honest with both of these trailers. I'm not a huge fan of this new art style thing.
I like it more than I like it more.
It's a really simplified and in some cases simplistic art style. So like the things like the fight choreography isn't there like it has been in the past, and like just the little details aren't there. The faces are just kind of like a blank canvas with eyes and a mouth. It's less exciting to me.
I like that they use kind of that comic book, the little dots on the. You see that? You notice that in the trailer? Yeah. You kind of got that. Looks like a comic book page, which I think is it probably inspired a lot by what Spider-Man and Spider-Verse was doing, and trying to feel more like a comic book. I really like the thick black outlines around the characters, especially in the Superman trailer. But again, different strokes.
Yeah, not a fan myself. But other than that, I like the idea that there's going to be new DC animated content. I'll say that. I wasn't blown away by either trailer, and I'm very much not interested in a Superman origin story again.
That's fair. So okay, to confirm, the Deathstroke Knights and Dragons was an animated series on the CW, and it was probably on CWC, which is why no one even talks about it, which is their online streaming platform.
Okay,
sure. There was a Bronze Tiger show on there for a little bit, and it was weird. But so this has just been re-edited into a movie, which I think they put all this work into it, and no one watched it, and I think they're like, well, people watch the animated movies, we put it up, people will watch it. And I think that's a smart move.
And people love Deathstroke. It's a cool character.
No, that makes sense. I didn't hear about this, and usually I hear about the movies because they announce them pretty decently far in advance.
Mm-hmm. And we have Michael Chiklis as Deathstroke.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I don't think that was his name in the show The Shield. Mr. Shield, it's good to see you. Detective Shield.
But yeah, I guess that's why the animation looks pretty simplistic here. I'm not a big fan of it.
Sure.
But I'm a big fan of Deathstroke. I think this is cool that we're getting this bit of animation from him. And if they're re-editing the whole series, I mean, hopefully they pick all the best parts.
The best parts.
Or are able to thread a pretty cool story.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, as we know, in this age of golden television, most television series that are serialized a lot of times feel like a long movie anyway. Yeah. So
sometimes they're designed that way.
Yeah. So this is coming out August 4th, 2020, the Deathstroke. So that's right away. Deathstroke has been in a lot of stuff lately. If you consider Titans, if you consider Arrow, he made a small cameo, I guess, in Batman vs Superman, if you include that one.
Oh yeah.
But he's popped up. Young Justice, I feel like he was in a lot of that. So I feel like they've really leaned into Deathstroke. I find Deathstroke so interesting because maybe the character and what's going on with him in the pop culture, less so the character himself. I don't find the character that interesting. But he's clearly like a visual kind of copy of Deathstroke, but could not be, or of Deadpool.
It's the other way around, though.
I mean, either way, they're kind of it's the Submariner Aquaman situation, right? But the characters could not be more different in how they're portrayed, even though they use similar tools and weapons and stuff. But they've really leaned into this idea of Deathstroke having a son and like a wife, as and they certainly leaned into it in the Titan season 2. Jeremy can attest to that. I don't know if you ever finished Titan season 2.
I did.
Yeah. It's always less interesting than I think that they think it is.
Yeah, but because it's been done before, he what I get out of that trailer is that it seems like his backstory is almost exactly the same as Deadshot's backstory. He's a bad guy, really good at killing people, but he cares about his family, so you can kind of justify his actions, right? I don't know, I'm kind of bored with that.
Well, it only goes so far because it's like, just because someone has a family doesn't mean they can get away with murder.
But that's what happens.
I know, but what I'm saying, it's like that's what they're asking you to
exactly.
Say, hey. Yeah. Let the actions of this person go.
Well, and they're only killing bad guys, right? In these shows,
right?
We know that these are bad.
But they talk about the other times they don't do that.
Yeah.
But they don't show those things. So it's like it's kind of like having your cake and eating it too. It doesn't always work for me. I find Deathstroke to be kind of boring as a character. He has a certainly cool look. Everything's the idea of like a super soldier who uses a sword and is a deadly shot is very cool. Yeah. But I just never feel like it's ever capitalized on in like a super interesting way. So we'll see. This will be interesting to watch. Okay, the next one then is obviously Superman Man of Tomorrow. I'll look that up a little bit in a second here, but this is a Superman origin story that's like playing it very old school, like very traditional. Yeah. So much so that I think that they're like, and I don't know, maybe if you pick this up, but that line where he says, "What's the S for?" and he says it's Superman. Oh, yeah, it's like, because how many times have we heard the "What's the S for?" stands for hope over the last, I don't know, 15 years? Maybe. I don't know. When did Man of Steel come out?
Not 15 years ago, was it?
10 years ago? Christ. 10 years ago, maybe? 10 years ago. Give or take. I think. I'll look that up as well. Man of Steel came out in 2013, 8 years ago. Okay. So at least over those 8 years, we've heard a lot of the S. The S stands for hope, and that seemed like a very on the nose like callback to it. Doesn't stand for hope anymore. Maybe it still can, but in this version of this Superman origin, it stands for Superman again.
So the idea is like he named himself Superman.
We'll find out. So they're doing stuff like they're bringing Martian Manhunter in. I think that's
cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
They're obviously playing up this idea of like two aliens, protecting Earth from other aliens, which I think is a concept that is always kind of been in the background, but they never really leaned into it. So that'll be interesting. And then like you have what's his name, the biker dude, Lobo, which another character in DC that I think. Not as exciting or interesting as they think it is. At least not in like when played straight. Yeah. Well, so Jeremy, what do you think of the Superman trailer?
I actually think it looks pretty incredible. The way the trailer was even made, I think it just really showcases a new tone, a new take.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely getting tired of the old animation style, and this one
yeah.
at first can definitely be off-putting a little bit, but I just think the way this trailer proceeds with the music and just how it ramps up, shows a lot of the action.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's going to be a really, really enjoyable movie.
I think it's going to be a nice change of tone from the last DC animated movie, which was very dark, and we're kind of restarting things with speaking of Justice League Dark, Justice League Dark is in on the background, but the Apocalypse War, just by its nature, extremely dark. This is very much a shift in tone. They're going a different direction with the art style. It reminds me a little bit of kind of like that Archer art style, a little less detailed, but it gives you. It's actually more flexible when you're a little bit less detailed, you can do a little bit more adventurous things, I think, and they kind of fit the world better, or feel more cohesive. So that'll be interesting. But again, Lobo, I really like Lobo in the Justice League action episodes, the ones he's in, because that show is kind of like we'll do some crazy stuff with the voice actors, and the characters,
And that show's already very much tongue in cheek, right?
Yeah. Well, some of it is, but it's never really taking itself too seriously. So they can do some fun stuff with Lobo, and seems like it's taking itself a bit more seriously. So you'll have some challenges with Lobo, especially if he's trying to pull off like breaking the fourth wall stuff, which again I don't think rarely works, and even Deadpool doesn't pull it off every time that you use it.
Yeah, they won't do that in this movie. There's no way.
Yeah. Okay, so and by the way, so the release date for that is August 23rd. So we're getting 2 DC movies, animated movies in August. So one at the beginning of the month, one at the end. Okay, now into some kind of broader movie news. One of them being something that's close to my heart, which is Tron 3 is coming. This is a surprise. This news dropped yesterday, and according to Disney Insider, which got an exclusive scoop, it is still technically a rumor, I think, at this stage, but it's a little bit more than a rumor, somewhere in between a confirmation and just a kind of a faraway rumor. The rumor has it that the sequel to Tron Legacy has been greenlit by the executives at Disney, who are see now as the right time to bring the franchise back. So they currently have a script, and they're currently looking for director. Their hope is to get the Tron Legacy director Joseph Krasinski back, but it's still early, so it's hard to tell. Krasinski, for the record, has been very vocal about wanting to make Tron 3. Talked about how he had a really great script for it and all this kind of stuff, and then it never got made. And it was, on the backs of Tomorrowland failing at the box office, which makes sense because that movie's not very good. I don't think very good. It's very boring. And for a movie of that style, it's pretty boring. I don't know if you've seen it, Dan.
No.
Tom Hanks in maybe one of the most, in a quote-unquote Disney, adventure movie, could not be more, of a snore fest. It's insane. Wasted, I would say. So, anyway, so today's a different day. There was a rumor earlier this year, late last year, that they were trying to bring in Jared Leto into the picture, and that the movie was going to be called Tron Ascension, and it was going to be about kind of like a reboot spin-off movie instead of a direct sequel to Tron Legacy. And I don't remember how much you remember of Tron Legacy.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Man, it's so good. It's not so good, but it looks it's visually really stunning, I think, and unlike any other movie, and the soundtrack and music with it kind of are worth the price of admission. The story's kind of whatever. And they were doing digital de-aging before it was really good,
right?
So that doesn't really age well, but I think it's really fun. So one of the big rumors one of the big parts of this rumor is that, and this is coming direct from the mouth of Disney executive Mike Mitchell-Lieb, said that one of the most important pieces to the puzzle would be to get Daft Punk back on board.
Right. No, I get it.
Yeah, right. So apparently that's happening. There are people that's in the works, and they're talking about it as a sequel. So what that means, who knows? The original plan for the sequel is to have the digital characters and stuff from the grid invading the real world, which I don't think is interesting, by the way. I don't think that's a great idea. I don't know what they're going to do, but I wouldn't lean that direction. The grid is an interesting place. Spend your time there.
I mean, what do you do with it, right? It's like with Jurassic Park, you kind of have to up the ante. If you're just going back to the same park every time, people are going to get bored with it. If they're just going back into the same video game, what's the point of making a sequel, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think there's a lot of kind of interesting things you can... I guess what I'm saying is are light cycles exciting on the streets of New York versus in a neon arena world?
I think you could find a way to make it interesting, but I don't know. I also am not very interested in Tron in general.
So for me, there's two things that come with this rumor. A, yes, it's exciting that Tron is coming back, but two, it might mean that we might get a 4K re-release of Tron Legacy, which would look super good on the television, and you would have to then watch it. Legally, would be obliged to. We'd replace every movie in the movie list, the movie club, with Tron Legacy and have to watch it. Underrated, I just think, as a film. It wasn't a big box office hit. It only made about I don't know if I copied this over, $400 million, I think.
I don't know. Like if all that's great about the movie is the soundtrack and the cool bright lights and visuals, like you're just watching a music video.
Well, it's the world, right? Like the world of the grid. Like I said, the world of the grid. This idea of and the way that they like created it for Tron Legacy was really interesting. And some of it works, some of it doesn't. But there's like a really cool like nightclub like shootout scene, and like the way people die is like they fall apart into like tiny little pixels and stuff. Right. They like disintegrate. So like there's some interesting stuff visually there, but they didn't really explore the world too much. So I think you could dive into like what that means a little bit more. I'm less interested in a real world version of Tron than I am going back to the grid in some way. But if Daft Punk's there, that's all that matters. Jeremy, do you care about Tron at all?
I don't really, but I mean, it's a pretty cool like sci-fi world that was created a long time ago. So it has like deep roots, and it's different than other stuff, right? Like it's and it just visually the aesthetic is pretty cool. So and add the music to it, and yeah, like it's a cool visual feast.
Like honestly, like you could just like for fun, you can throw on the light cycle scene from Tron Legacy, and just the music and visuals from that. Like it's really exciting what they do and how it looks, and do stuff. You can do stuff like that, and they obviously go like all over the place. Like they have light cycles, they have a light car, they have light planes. In that movie, it's like there's all this stuff, but I think there's a lot of room here. So we'll keep an eye on this. So speaking of John Krasinski, he's apparently working on a Twister reboot. So obviously he's obviously not going to be doing Tron right away. So in the meantime, he's going to be working on a Twister reboot. Dan, we were briefly talking about this, I think, yesterday in the backyard.
Yeah. It's important to say where you're talking about it. It's got to be addressing like climate change, right? Like that has to be.
Well, yeah. If you're any natural disaster movie that's made right now, it has to be talking about climate change.
There has to be a scientist standing up on a podium, kind of like talking down at people about letting this get this bad.
Well, I wouldn't phrase it that way. It
has to be about tornadoes, though.
Yeah, of course, it has to be. That's the whole point of the. Well, I mean, maybe Twister could be a hurricane too.
I think it would almost have to be a hurricane.
Because that's like the next level up from a tornado.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, the idea, like I think the way you do it has to be like the frequency of tornadoes becomes higher, and then they eventually maybe
some sort of
super storm.
Maybe it has some sharks in it.
Calling it twisters.
I guess you have to call them twisters. In this world, they call them. There's no such thing as a tornado.
No, twisters has to be the third one, so you can replace the S with a 3. So you have to do.
There's already an S in the word twister, though, so you could just do that.
Well, yeah, but okay, fine. So it's Twister, Twisters, and then the reboot is the Twister, but then there's the 3 in there, so it's like,
Yeah, something like that. If you get past number 2. And then number 4 is Twisters in Space, right?
Exactly.
I mean, the original
Twisters on the Moon.
The original movie isn't really like along those lines of.
It's not. It was before those types of movies, before like the 2012s of the world came out. It was about storm chasing, right? That's like, and they tried to make it really exciting, and
And it ended up being one of the first disaster movies, like of modern times, I guess, right?
Yeah. Is it fair to call it a disaster movie?
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
A tornado is a natural disaster.
Yeah, but I guess like the modern definition of a disaster movie is kind of like that, like world-ending.
Yeah, like the tornadoes don't pick up. The tornadoes aren't lit on fire and attacking buildings with the rock jumping off of them.
Right.
It's
Wait, is that a movie?
I just made that up.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like
it could be. You're right. It sounds like it could be. Okay. So we talked about a prequel film to Mad Max Fury Road, and it was coming. It was being called Furiosa. At the time, we mentioned that director Tim Miller was looking to cast a younger actress for the role, as opposed to bringing back Charlize Theron. Well, Charlize has had a chance to address that choice while speaking to The Hollywood Reporter recently. So, quote, "It's a tough one to swallow. Listen, I fully respect George." That's right, it's Tim Miller. I think it's George Miller. I don't know. I think I might have made that same mistake last time, too. Let me just fix that. I fully respect George, if not more so in the aftermath of making Free Road with him. He's a master, and wish him nothing but the best. Yeah, it's a little heartbreaking for sure. I really love that character, and I'm so grateful I had a small part in creating her. She will forever be someone I think of and reflect on fondly. Obviously, I would love to see her story continue, and it feels like he has to go about it this way. Then I trust him in that manner. We get so hung up on the smaller details that we forget the thing that we emotionally tap into has nothing to do with that minute thing that we're focusing on. So she seems she's cool. Okay with it.
Yeah.
That being said, though, I find this very interesting in the light of even just, again, with Tron Legacy situation, the digital de-aging, with the most recent Marvel movies and the stuff that they've done, Star Wars stuff, to some lesser, to some wins and some losses, I think, on them.
Yeah.
But the ability to de-age actors has become, like, almost uncanny, I'd argue. And the more movies you have of them is the younger roles to reference, the better you can do with that. And there's a lot of Charlize Theron movies you could reference
for sure
with her as a young woman, right? So knowing that, and with that in mind, hearing Charlize's response, and yeah, she's cool with it. But just overall, do you think it's the right choice to go with a younger actress as opposed to using these modern tools, the digital de-aging, to take the character and the character and the actress that we know played her and created her, right, or helped create her, portray her on the screen, again as the prequel film? Does that make sense? Like it feels like it's George Miller going, well, I don't really want to use that technology. Like I'm all about practical effects and all that kind of stuff, and I'm gonna go about it by casting younger actors because that was what we used to do. Well, you don't necessarily have to do that anymore. That's a whole different bag of worms in terms of what kind of problems that can open up. But in this specific case, which would you prefer, if you could make the choice, if you were George Miller?
I'm agreeing. I'm saying go with the younger actor in the role. The reality is it's a character that's at a different point in their life, right? So it makes sense for a different actor with different mannerisms to be playing that character.
Sure.
Yeah, it's similar, but different because it's a younger version of the character. I don't like the idea of de-aging all these actors. First of all, younger actors need jobs too.
Yes, yes, that's part of the problem that opens up.
But then, you'll end up, no matter what, it'll become a bit too one note if you have the same character or same actor playing the different versions of the character. It's going to have the same tone, and I'm not saying Charlize Theron doesn't have range because obviously she does. She's an Oscar-winning actor, but I think it's okay to have something new or somebody new in the role and bring something new to the role that she probably couldn't because people are individuals, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think we need to start cookie cutter making copies of everybody.
Well, I guess that's fair. I feel like when you're talking about a prequel of a character like that, I think it does, to some extent, make sense to use the same person. In some ways, it depends how much younger we're talking here. If obviously it's like if it's a child, that doesn't make sense.
Well, yeah.
But if we're talking like 5-6 years, 7-10 years, even maybe, it's doable. There's a window there. I'm on the fence about this one. Jeremy, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you, Julian. We got to know how young this character is, but I think probably the studio probably even wants Charlize to come back. Like I think it's the typical way about going with these types of things with a huge star and this huge character. But Charlize basically is just trusting Miller's vision, and she's basically saying that the character is bigger than the actor. So we'll just have to wait and see kind of where the story goes, and it's probably going to be a completely different character, right? She's different at this point in her life, so I think it makes sense to have a fresh actor bring different into the role, and just to kind of showcase where she was before, and then you could always bring Charlize back for a proper sequel timeline.
Mm-hmm. I think here's an interesting analogy. I think of Men in Black 3 when I think of this kind of stuff.
Okay.
Right. So in Men in Black 3, they recast, help me out here, Agent K, Tommy Lee Jones, as Josh Brolin.
Brolin, yeah.
And his performance as a young Agent K is uncanny good. It's so good. It's the best part of that movie. It's so good. That, and there's the whole scene where he's talking about how he's like watching baseball and it's like multi-dimensional the way he thinks. Those two moments, those two things are the best part of that movie. Underrated, I think, as a film. But then you also think of things like I guess Guardians of the Galaxy 2, right? And it's not a prequel, so it's a younger version. We're just seeing like flashbacks to a younger version of this character, right? And in that case, you have you're familiar with the look of that person when they're younger because it's a famous actor, right? And it's easier for like the audience to kind of like believe it as a part of being one cohesive whole. So if you're in a movie and it's flashing forward and backward, it maybe make more sense. But if you're doing a completely different movie, I think maybe recasting is the right choice. I'm kind of flopping back and forth on this. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but I guess to be able to have the choice is kind of cool. What I worry about a little bit is that you have like fans with so much kind of ability to kind of influence studios now, or we're seeing that a lot more frequently.
Sure.
And people get really attached to performances and people's actors in certain roles, and that instead of recasting in like a James Bond-esque fashion or Batman-esque fashion, right, you're gonna end up with the same actor forever, for a very long time in roles.
Could be.
Right? Which I don't necessarily think is great either. So, interesting thing to think about. So the continuing saga of AMC theaters is continuing. AMC had originally announced, this was about 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. There's a weird time dilation thing. Yeah. AMC had originally announced that they were not going to require customers to wear masks when the theaters reopened. And the part of the statement was they didn't want to get involved in a political quagmire type situation. Ridiculous. Which is by far the absolute worst stance to take. They found the worst possible stance to take.
Yeah, because there's nothing political
exactly.
about it.
So it's crazy. So people were like that. People started freaking out, as you would expect.
And for the record, they're saying that because they want as many people as possible in their theaters.
Oh yeah,
right?
Oh yeah. It's super cynical. It's easy for them to say, well, we don't want to get political, but it's real. No, you just want the highest possible amount of people, sick or not, in your theater.
Yeah, because I mean they're in a tough spot financially, understandably, but
as we've talked about.
This is above all that.
So this caused a huge uproar, as you'd expect, and they have since reversed their statement, saying, we didn't really think it through, and that if and when we reopen, masks will be required. So it's just, I'm constantly blown away by the mismanagement of by this company through this whole.
Well, they're flailing, right? Like they're in panic mode right now. That doesn't excuse anything that's being said. I'm just saying that's what's happening to them, and
right.
It's true. Like evidently they're not handling it very
well. Where does this go from here? Like, do you really expect AMC to go bankrupt and like these thousands of theaters across the United States to go empty?
I think there's a good chance. Yeah, it's really looking that way.
Well, like, and does some billionaire, does Amazon buy up a bunch of theaters?
Hey man, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
That's something that people have talked about.
Yeah, it's not like there'll never be movie theaters again. Like some of them are going to shut down. Maybe that company itself goes out of business, but it'll get picked up again by whoever's going to carry the torch. Like there's still going to be movie theaters.
Right.
I don't know.
It's just we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but it's just something to think about.
There's these things, even like earlier talking about production schedules and stuff. Like it's impossible to guess because nobody knows how this thing's going to play out. So it's really hard. Like, yeah, September could come around and we might not see a spike and things might start getting better right away. And I hope that's the case, but it may not happen that way.
Right.
We may see a spike in September. We may see things get worse throughout the winter. Who knows?
And we've talked about this for a while, but like, how does that affect new releases? I mean, you can't push Tenet forever. And it certainly, I mean, maybe you can, because Christopher Nolan's like based his whole career on movies should be seen in the theaters or seen in the theaters. But then you have the Trolls World Tour situation, which forever go down as the Trolls Gate. But like, there's just so many different possibilities. Like, can you go 2 summers without blockbuster movies coming out in a
nobody wants to, but we may have to.
Right. But like, how does that affect things? Well, we don't know. It's all just something to ponder and dread. Okay, so Jeremy, this one's for you. Sylvester Stallone on an Instagram thread for director's cut of Rambo: Last Blood that he's putting out, which apparently is unbelievably bad. It revealed, and I quote, "I am doing a director's cut of Rocky IV, which will be amazing. 5 exclamation marks," unquote. Well, I'll just double. I think it's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's 5.
Yeah, I don't think he was made. There's any sort of connection.
So yeah, Rocky IV was considered by many to be the best Rocky movie. I don't know if that's actually true. Like from a film perspective, it could be Rocky Balboa actually. It could be the first Rocky, obviously, because it won an Academy Award. But it's certainly, if nothing else, it's the most popular of the Rocky movies. Do we need a director's cut of this movie? I understand director's cuts are all the rage these days, but like really, that movie came out in the '80s. It's 2020.
I mean, if there's footage we haven't seen of this movie or scenes that we haven't seen, why not? Like, let's see it.
It all as a montage, though.
It probably has the best training montages in this one. So
For sure.
Sure. Yeah. I do quote Rocky IV a lot, actually, more than almost any of the others, but mostly just the one line. Well, that and if he dies, he dies. Okay. Similar to that, the version of Casino Royale that is coming to HBO Max is actually longer and more violent than the theatrical cut. So there's another one for you. No one asked for that.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
Yeah, if you're into James Bond.
Yeah.
Right. Aren't you excited about this? Or?
I want to go and rewatch the Daniel Craig Bond movies. I think that would be a fun thought experiment to go see. It's a kind of it's a pretty long run he's had, right, as Bond, and there's been some really high highs and some really low lows. So trying to maybe parse Quantum of Solace from with fresh eyes and perspective on the rest of the run might be interesting. It was this only movie that they did a direct sequel to. It picks up moments after the Casino Royale. That's interesting in and of itself, but it's I don't know.
This Casino Royale, I think, lands in the top 5, if not even the top 3 of all the James Bond movies.
I think so.
Of all the Daniel Craig ones, or all the Bond ones?
It's true. There's at least 5, I think now, right? He's done 5.
I didn't hear that.
I asked if that's your top of all the Daniel Craig Bonds or all Bonds of all time.
All Bonds. I think it's just too important. I think it people just counted it out before it came out. They changed too much. They went darker. They went grittier. I just think it was the next evolution of Bond, much like, I don't know, what we'd probably say that GoldenEye was from stuff before it, right? What Pierce Brosnan and the whole creative team brought to that. So yeah, I don't know. I just think it's up there with the best. So
yeah, and I agree with that. It's a clear delineating line between modern James Bond and what we would consider the campy stuff.
Right. And it's based off a story by Ian Fleming, right?
It's one of I think it was one of the last novels that they adapted. There was technically a Casino Royale movie in the 60s, not considered canon or quote unquote canon. It was made by a different production company, all this kind of stuff. When there was this whole thing about not being able to reference the character of Blofeld, and they would allude to him but never show his face and stuff. It was really weird. There's some weird stuff going on. There's a really fun video on IGN that you can watch, which is, I think it's called How to Watch All the James Bond Movies as if they're one character. If it's one character. And this guy goes through this whole thing where he's like, this is where the character the career starts, and it starts with Casino Royale, and then there's this whole thing where he threads this needle with all the movies. And there's some creative license there, obviously, but it's kind of a fun, thought experiment.
That's cool. Yeah.
So I would recommend checking that out. All right. So here's the Ninja Turtle stuff. So Deadline. This is just. I'm just going to read from the Deadline report. Nickelodeon is reporting rebooting. Sorry, and also reporting. No, Deadline's reporting that Nickelodeon is rebooting Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Everybody all caught up now?
Yeah,
We're all on the same page?
for the big screen with Point Grey Pictures, which is Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg and James Weaver's production company. So that's Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg, and Jeff Rowe directing. So he did Gravity Falls, and he's a TV director. But people like Gravity Falls.
I've seen a little bit of it, yeah.
So
it's cute.
Brendan O'Brien, who wrote Neighbors, Sorority Rising, and Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. Isn't that the one with the guys from Workaholics?
Just the one.
Right.
Just Adam.
Right. Okay. Adam Devine. So I haven't seen either of those movies, but those aren't the best writing credits. I would argue. Anyway, who will write the screenplay? Paramount will be handling global distribution. So the twist is it's going to be entirely CG. And it's the first time in over a decade we've had a Ninja Turtles movie that's just CG. We did that. There was those Michael Bay movies. Everyone remembers those,
yeah.
right?
He didn't direct those ones.
No, but he definitely produced them, and his name was all over the marketing for that.
Eventually CG, like the characters were. So
Yeah. So this is entirely CG. In 2007, you guys remember this? The film titled TMNT. It was just simply called TMNT. Written, directed by Kevin Monroe, was released in March 23rd, 2007. It used 100% computer-generated graphics. It was like a little bit ahead of its time. And it was the final Ninja Turtles movie in the Warner Brothers distribution stuff. There's like this whole backstory where like the franchise was like bought and sold by different organizations. Right. So anyway, it's back with like Nickelodeon now. They've been doing some interesting stuff with them on television, and I would recommend some of the newer stuff. It's really fun. Meanwhile, and I don't know how to reckon these two things like together. Okay. Meanwhile, at CBS All Access, which is, I don't know if you guys are familiar, is the much maligned streaming service.
I don't know if anyone's
yeah, because only people who watch Star Trek know. A live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series is in the works, and okay, this is insane. So it's set to adapt The Last Ronin, which is an upcoming TMNT 5-issue miniseries, which is coming out later this year from IDW. And the synopsis is, in a future New York, far from the one we know today, a lone surviving turtle goes on a seemingly hopeless mission to obtain justice for his fallen family and friends.
Sweet.
Isn't that... Okay, so...
Old Man Leonardo.
Yeah, essentially. Or... The Last Ronin is that Keanu Reeves? The Last Ronin, I think.
He's in the movie called Ronin 47.
That's the one I'm thinking of. That's Tom Cruise, right?
That's your boy.
Yeah. So I have a hard time believing that these things are happening at the same time.
At odds with one another. I mean.
Right? Because they're so completely different.
But is there someone who kind of is running the show on both? Like they get to decide, or is it like
it's
separate entities that are able to do this because of
it's
whatever reasons?
TMNT is owned by CBS Viacom, and CBS All Access is obviously the TV side. They need content for that fucking streaming service. The fact that they're even doing their own streaming service is stupid, but they need content. Star Trek alone can't keep it alive, so they need other stuff. So that I believe that, and there's
popular to like adapt things,
right, and it's all about taking that brand awareness. TMNT has a large brand awareness.
This is more of a, like in line of a proper reboot that TMNT needs.
Right.
Like, I feel like TMNT has been rebooted more than any other IP like ever. There's
something like 10 different television shows. There's video games. There's different styles of video games. There's those original live action movies. There's even the comic books. Like if you think of back to like the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic books, which none of us are old enough to remember, but we've seen images of them. Really dark and gritty. They all have red face masks before they got different colors. Right. And then there's like all these different versions, and they really like lean into it in certain ones where like they jump between different dimensions, and they have a lot to play with. But you're right. I think it is all over the place. And if you're gonna do these at the same time, like obviously this live action one is for a very different audience than the animated one that's coming to the big screen, right?
Yeah, I
So
guess one's TV and one's the big screen. And for the animated one, like I feel like Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, them at the top there. I think that's
Right.
probably pretty.
That's a
good.
great pairing. Yeah.
They clearly grew up with Ninja Turtles, so they're gonna
yeah.
the movies that so they're gonna I feel like bring that.
Does
to life.
Seth Rogen cast himself as?
You think Michelangelo?
Yeah, obviously.
I don't.
That's
I
the
don't-
easy guess, right?
I don't think he'd be a good Michelangelo.
Yeah, probably not. But it's the easy.
That's not. It's not really just because he's the comic relief. Like
Yeah, like he's
the
not
typical character that Seth Rogen plays.
Well,
isn't
what
really
if it's a
like that.
stoner version of Mikey?
Will they ever do that?
Kind of.
The newest animated ones or CG?
There is a million versions of every turtle that you can think of. So speaking of which, if this live action version is real, which is the turtle? Who's the last turtle?
Leonardo.
Has to be Leonardo?
I think ultimately, yeah, he's the one with the maybe Raph, but those are the ones that would survive because the idea if he's a lone turtle means the other ones are gone. The other ones have been killed, presumably, or taken prisoner.
It's also in the far future, which is the weird twist there. It's like Batman Beyond, but for Ninja Turtles.
And then I think it's easy to do Raph because he's angry and violent and is very similar to Wolverine, right? That has an Old Man Logan feel. It wasn't just a joke.
No, no, I know it can be both.
But I think Leo is the one that's the most fleshed out as a character and has the more interesting journey there.
Yeah,
Having been the leader that lost everybody underneath him, and then having to go on a journey for retribution.
I think Raph is the only closest. It's a close second for me, just because you have Leo leading, and then he dies, and he has to kind of like pick up the pieces. He doesn't feel like he's worthy, all these kinds of things, and then like it's more just like a pure revenge tale there, less of a redemption arc, But who knows? Jeremy, who would you want it to be? Which turtle would it be? That was your old man turtle?
Yeah, I think Leo.
Okay.
It's got it.
So,
unless the movie's a comedy.
it's some very different. Yeah, and then it has to be Mikey. So, Pixar alert. It doesn't happen very often. We don't get to do that. Pixar alert. We should have a theme for that. We get to use once every 4 years. A trailer for Pixar's next movie dropped. I don't know if it's the first trailer. I haven't been paying that close attention to Pixar. I haven't seen Coco. Is it Coco?
Coco's one of them.
Coco, and I haven't seen whatever the latest is. Coco the latest one?
No, there's been another one. It's like
The Last Dinosaur. No, that's old.
That's older. There was one about the kids. Like the dad dies and then he has like D&D stuff. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Okay, so the last two apparently haven't really left a big mark on.
It's the whole it's COVID, so I'm not hanging out with my nieces and nephews. I don't have the opportunity.
Oh, we have Disney Plus. They're all on there.
Yeah, I know. I guess I have the opportunity. I just never do it without kids around.
That's fair. So this one seems interesting. So it's called Soul, and I think of Pixar and I think okay. So where do I know Pixar from? I think Toy Story. I almost said Toys R Us for a second.
I heard it.
And R.I.P. in the States to Toys R Us. I think of that, and if you think of what people look like, human beings look like in that movie, it is terrifying. They do not look very good. But we fast forward to today, and this is set in New York City, or at least part of it is, and it's stylized realism, but it looks very real. I think. Besides maybe some character shapes,
it's not. I don't think it's his job. It's not trying to look real.
No, I know.
It has its own style.
It looks more like of the real world than some of the previous Pixar movies that do. I think more than any of the others in a long time. And it certainly we watched two trailers. We watched one that was entirely just set in New York City, and it looked like a very mature Pixar movie. Dealing with something that they've always dealt with deeper themes, but through the lens of usually some sort of child character or something, a toy, a spoon. But this, the main character is a full-grown adult, right? And the second trailer, which we watched, I think
we shouldn't talk too much about it because it's full of spoilers. Like it gives away plenty of the plot.
Right.
But there's much more to it. So there's a play on where the soul has two meanings. He's a jazz musician and teacher, and then also people have souls. So they're using they're using both versions of the word.
So he has like a near-death experience, or it's not clear. And we don't want to speculate too much, but he goes into some sort of afterlife scenario,
Right.
So that's interesting. I think they've dealt with. It's almost like because Coco deals with the afterlife too, right?
It does.
So this is like they're like that. Are there people struggling with getting old and dying at Pixar? Do you think that's what's going on?
Well, I think it's a constant theme,
right? Yeah,
it's
up.
Well, and it's also like these movies at the end of the day are kids' movies as much as there are adult themes and mature themes within them, and that's something that kids start thinking about. Like once you become aware of the concept of finality and the concept that you're going to die, it's a terrifying thought, and kids need to find a way to deal with it.
But it should be terrifying. It doesn't have to be terrifying.
The concept of death is terrifying.
It doesn't have to be to a child movie.
Jesus Christ.
Well, yeah.
What are you trying to say?
What I'm saying is that like we shouldn't be afraid of death, and that maybe that like these explorations of it are a healthy way of preventing an unhealthy fear of death, because you shouldn't be afraid of it, right? Because it's inevitable. So there's no reason to be like. I'm not saying walk out in front of a moving car because whatever, but I'm saying. Death is a part of life, and that's just something that people need to come to terms with.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I'm pretty sure that's the purpose of these movies, right?
Yeah,
that's what happens within the movie. That's why it's important for kids to watch.
Right. Jeremy, have you seen the trailer?
No.
No, he fell asleep. Okay, so elsewhere at Disney, we have Margot Robbie, hot off the heels of the Birds of Prey movie, is going to be, or is now attached to star in a Pirates of the Caribbean spin-off film. Don't make that face. What's that face for?
How is there always a Pirates of the Caribbean film?
Yeah, look, the movies are based around
There's always a Pirates of the Caribbean movie. There's always one in theaters, and there's always one in production at all times.
That's not even true. There hasn't been one in like 5 years.
I've never seen one of them.
Really? The first one is good. The first one I think is a fun movie.
They're all right. They're fine, like fun little adventure movies.
So but they've all kind of relied on Johnny Depp's charisma, I think, a lot. The world is interesting too, but it's relied on. It really hinges on Johnny Depp. Those first 3 movies do.
Right.
4 movies. Fuck.
I'm pretty sure there's 13.
This is interesting because it's probably not going to have Johnny Depp in it, and having Margot Robbie, who's in of herself a big star, but having a female-led pirate movie is interesting. I think it's pretty cool. It'll be cool to see how this franchise can live without Johnny Depp, and if it can, great. If not, it's not really a big loss. Yeah, it's not a big loss. The interesting part of this is that it's going to be written by Christina Hodson, who wrote Birds of Prey, and has been working with Margot Robbie for a little bit.
Sure.
Now. So there's kind of like a team going that they're kind of building there. So that's interesting. This, by the way, Christina Hodson wrote Birds of Prey. She also wrote Bumblebee, and I know you didn't see Bumblebee, but Bumblebee is a really good Transformer movie. It's probably the best one since the first. So again, not a high bar, but very good movie.
It still counts.
Yeah. Just going through a quibble. We're getting into Quibi soon, so just a couple last things. So Elizabeth Banks is going to star as Mrs. Frizzle in the Magic School Bus movie. It's good. I think that's a good.
There's the Magic School Bus movie.
Yeah, there is.
Awesome.
And Elizabeth Banks is going to play.
That is perfect casting.
That's really good. That's a very good casting. We watched a trailer for Ava, just a generic action movie. It has like. I was like naming action movies that it seemed like, because it seemed like it was borrowing things from every action movie.
It's just this time the spy is Jessica Chastain instead of whoever it was last time.
It's like Salt.
It's a spy movie where she gets betrayed by the agency and then she's on the run.
John Wick. Like there's like a million. Yeah. So who knows? It does look well done, but there's nothing really to write home about there. So before we transition to television, just a couple quick mentions of some people who passed away. So we do need to mention that Joel Schumacher recently passed away at the age of 80 from cancer, and Ian Holm passes away at the age of 88. So Dan, you're obviously closest to Ian Holm with his portrayal of Bilbo in Lord of the Rings. We were familiar with Joel Schumacher with him directing both Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, which I think we can all agree are not great Batman movies, but are certainly visually interesting. Are you going to defend Batman Forever? Which is the one you can defend, I think.
Yeah, I think so. There's rumors there's a director's cut of that one.
What does that even mean?
It was like, I don't know. Apparently, they dove deeper into
The back credit card stuff.
And the fear and all that shit.
Right. Okay. Okay. Are you
those
eating
two
right now?
movies, should have been named. Like they should swap names. It makes more sense that way.
Because Robin's introduced in Batman Forever, and then Batman and Robin is the last one.
You're
How
right.
can you have a movie come after Forever?
The Batman and Robin is the fourth one. So 4 and
What?
Right.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that too. Yeah, you can do some great marketing
Yeah.
and stuff with that. Why is it even called Batman Forever?
it's,
I've never really.
You don't really
it doesn't-
thought about
right?
that?
It doesn't matter, but like.
it's a great title, but it normally titles have something to do with the movie.
because he returns, and now it's like.
But there's already Batman Returns. Batman Returns is already a movie. This is also a great title. Yeah, all right. I guess because they already used Batman Returns. They couldn't just call it Batman
And then
2.
there's Batman Forever, and then the next one is Batman. Oh, and Robin.
Oh yeah, he's here too. Also Batgirl.
Yeah.
So, we shit on those movies a lot. But that being said, like, I love that we live in a world where we got to see Arnold Schwarzenegger play Mr. Freeze.
And Jim Carrey as the Riddler.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Tommy Lee
That's
Jones.
it. No,
and
no,
Tommy
that's
Lee
it. No,
Jones
no,
as
no,
Two-Face.
Uma Thurman was Poison Ivy. Like that's
Yeah, also not great. I know Daniels particularly doesn't like Uma Thurman.
He's that role in the.
Well, it's clear that whatever Schumacher was doing was falling apart with Batman and Robin. Like that was
Right.
That was the end of it there.
Right.
And DC and Batman was kind of like a joke for a long time, right? We didn't get a movie until Christopher Nolan and Batman Begins, which,
Isn't that crazy?
which spawned a trilogy that
Right.
just shifted
Changed
everything.
comic book movies, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Like Joel Schumacher apparently was like he came up through the art department side of filmmaking, so he's very much like a visual guy first. So he would create these sets and these like stage things in a way that don't necessarily make physical sense, but look really cool.
Yeah.
Right. Like think
about the way the buildings were made out of statues in Gotham, and they
Right.
drove cars across arms.
That's to be fair, that's also kind of Tim Burton's influence as well.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of like Mr. Freeze's like hideout, where he's wearing that crazy house coat.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, but like it's way over the top, and that those
And it's silver and blue that whole movie too.
yeah, his
His
it's very
eyelashes
funny
are
to think
like
about.
little icicles.
What a cool idea. But like they're ice to meet you, Batman. Like the people they're having like an ice skate battle thing. It's like remember anyway. It doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that those movies were largely made to sell toys. That was they kind of ran out of ideas. They had to keep making Batman movies, and Joel Schumacher was going to do it.
Toys, by the way.
And yeah, of course,
It worked, yeah.
They built the bat suits around how could they make the coolest toys, essentially, right? Every kid loves bat
Well,
nipples, so
in terms of Batman Forever, I have
Right.
the Batmobile, which can turn into the bat plane or the bat
Right.
and the bat boat or whatever. 3 in 1.
also known as the does not have a cool name. It is not the other two super cool names, iconic.
Yeah.
Bat boat. It seems like they just ran out of ideas. I don't know. Yes, that's how I'll remember Joel Schumacher, and maybe that's not great, but I still like thinking of again. Just coming back to Mr. Freeze as
In terms of like wrapping up into a meme,
yeah
he's known for adding nipples to the bat.
to the bat suit, right? Which
Michael
we
Keaton apparently read the script for Batman Forever and then
Right.
said, "I'm not doing it."
yeah, this is again not shitting on Schumacher himself. He kind of stepped into like kind of a bit of a a thankless role there, right? Where you're taking over a franchise that's
and
being driven
important
to
to
the
know that
ground.
there are other people involved in the movie, so
Right,
it's not
exactly.
It's just
And
not
I just think that we were like, for me specifically, like I was the audience that just I didn't think of movies in the way we think of now. Like I just
Yeah, of course not.
purely enjoyed those movies and watched them like over and over.
Right. I remember like in Mask of the Phantasm was out around that same time, I want to say, And like I remember thinking that movie sucked compared to Batman Forever and Batman. But in retrospect, it's the other way around, and that's okay. Just we grow up, and that movie's made for kids essentially. But there's some oddly adult content in it, which is also weird. So, and then Dan, anything you want to say about Ian Holm?
I'm not much to say. Like, I'm obviously, most familiar with him as Bilbo. He also was the first android in Aliens, in the first Alien movie.
Oh, really?
He was, I don't remember the name of the character, but yeah.
He's the first one. Yeah.
No, phenomenal actor. I think he's known very well for, like, more as a stage actor. And I'm not that familiar with that work. But,
Speaking of stage performances, maybe not cool to do that during Ian Holmes. But anyway, I watched Hamilton recently. Okay, so quick interlude here. I'll play that Quibi game I mentioned to you guys before. So the other day, this is fun. this is fun. I promise. I just think this whole thing is just so ridiculous and stupid. So the other day, the official Quibi Twitter account, and first of all, is everyone familiar with what Quibi is? Quibi is a streaming service designed specifically for your phone. So all the content is vertical. It's vertical content.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's designed to be watched in short bursts.
You okay?
Okay. It is not doing well. I'll just put it that way. It's doing very poorly.
Sure.
So maybe they just ran out of money for their Twitter account, but here's what happened. So the other day, the official Twitter account for Quibi tweeted out a thread, so multiple tweets in a row, announcing new shows coming to the platform. It's exciting, right?
Sure.
Here's the thing, though. But all it was a series of vague one-sentence plot descriptions. No pictures, no titles, no trailers for any of them.
Okay.
so nothing. So here's the fun game I like to call Quibi craziness. Okay?
Okay. We'll workshop that name. But
what is crazier? That they didn't include the titles of the show. That they didn't include a poster or any image of the show. That they didn't include a trailer or any motion version of the show, even a GIF. What is crazier?
Well, that's the game, is to tell you which is crazier.
One of those things.
I thought you were going to have us guess what the movies are based on the line.
We could also do that. We could also do that. But I wanted to land on this, which I'm now, in retrospect, thinking that other game is more fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to find the...
What are you talking about?
Okay, just keep going. Answer the question first.
It's all
Jeremy, it's entirely crazy. I kind of like the idea of being mysterious.
I think I agree with that. Because like it doesn't make
that comes with the picture. Like in the picture, the be there. You know what I mean? Like they just announced what show.
It's just so stupid.
It was like Nintendo. They announced like 2 new games are coming for the SNES Classic or online Switch and the NES. They just said 3 new games are coming. They didn't have to tell us. We're gonna anticipate when they do tell us. But this one, it's like, okay, don't tell us. Now what do we do?
What do you want me to do with this information now? Where am I supposed to go with this?
Because so maybe not including the title. The title is the craziest thing because you could have a trailer or a picture that had the title in it, right? That might give you like an actor's anything. But just to give only a vague one-sentence plot description.
I think it's cool, like a cool idea at least, to do like a mysterious, like one-sentence thing. But I think that should be paired at least with a visual. It doesn't necessarily have to be the title, but
maybe a tweet that's gonna get retweeted and liked because the timestamp that's gonna guess the 3 shows based off the 3 descriptions.
That would be really cool. Hold on, I'm gonna just find these shows. I want to find. It's like now they're tweeting so fast. They're trying to bury that they did this. Dan, do you want to tell us about?
We don't have to do this.
Dan, tell me about Die Hard while I
Yeah, Die Hard is one of it's a trailer. I guess it's going to be on Quibi. Recently watched. Jeremy, are you familiar with this at all? Kevin Hart. Jeremy left.
He's like
it's one of these weird like hyper meta concepts. So I guess it's the real Kevin Hart in the movie, and the concept is that he's going to a school to learn how to be an action hero because he has this whole complex that everyone makes fun of him for being short and he can't be a leading man, right?
Right.
So that's the premise, and then he goes and John Travolta is the guy that's the headmaster of the school, I guess.
Right. Headmaster. I don't think that's really the instructor. I think is the idea.
But he's not John Travolta. He's a character. So it's one of those things where it's like it's a mixture of real life and fantasy or fiction. You know,
it's like
it's real life Kevin Hart.
Right.
They talk about him working with The Rock a lot. They talk about him as a movie star and nobody taking him seriously as an action hero. But then you have actors in these roles. Also, Miss Sunday from Game of Thrones is in it.
Right.
So it's weird to say the least.
Quibi is a strange beast, but here are the 3 descriptions. Now you guys get to create the shows off of them.
I'm not looking at the computers.
Okay. First, an animated comedy to accurately drag your astrology sign.
Say that one more time because I don't even know what that was.
So it's first an animated comedy to accurately drag. And look, you can look at this computer screen here. Just this one thing: accurately drag your astrology sign.
What does that mean?
You get to make that up.
You get to drag
your astrology sign.
That's got to be a typo, right? Like
maybe like a 3-year-old took over the account for
animated comedy to accurately maybe draw your astrology. G and W aren't that close to each other.
No,
I don't know, man.
It's like the first one has already stumped you. Jeremy, what would this be? What would that be to you?
Yeah.
No idea.
No way. Like, okay, yeah.
Okay, how about this one? A reality show where a bunch of people play with toys.
Okay, I see why this is a challenging tweet. And maybe that first game made more sense than this game because it's so vague that could be almost literally anything.
Yeah. And some non-news, and this one actually has the most information because it has some non-news with Mr. Nish Kumar, who's a comedian and host of Hello America. So that actually has information because we know someone who's in the show.
Sure. And okay, so non-news, it would be like maybe a satire, like a parody of a news show, like kind of
this
like
hour's
The
22 minutes
yeah,
kind of
something
situation.
like
Yeah, that's a very Canadian reference. I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with this hour's 22 minutes. Yeah, it's a 22-minute parody of a news program,
right,
including commercials. It's pretty funny sometimes. Okay, so. That's called Quibi Craziness, and we'll be revisiting that at another time.
Anytime they tweet something out, apparently.
It's pretty funny, man. I don't know. Okay, so I wanted to lighten the mood for a second because what we're going to next is less light, I would say.
Okay.
So a lot has happened, obviously, since we last recorded, not the least of which being a recent trend in which a couple things have happened. White actors stepping down from voice roles of non-white characters, and some shows pulling episodes, some racially insensitive episodes, from their streaming, wherever they're streaming, were available, right? So part of this was Kristen Bell stepping down from a role after fan backlash. Now most recently, the producers of The Simpsons have said that they will no longer have white actors play non-white characters, or I guess in that case, yellow.
I think Azaria stopped doing.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Apu.
Apu.
But that one's like the most egregious. Like,
yeah,
that is absolutely a racial stereotype.
Yeah. Other actors stepping down include, or another actor stepping down include Jenny Slate from Big Mouth. I don't know if you guys have seen Big Mouth on Netflix. So this is all in reference to the Black Lives Matter movement and representation in Hollywood.
Sure. Yep.
Right. I have some mixed feelings on this because specifically with the animated side of things, because I think it's a little antithetical to the nature of what animation allows you to do, which is to be or do anything, and be much more broad and creative. But I do understand the other side of things, which is that the way that the system's already set up is that it gives the white actors the leg up for those roles anyway already. So if you create a world where that's not the norm, it creates more room for non-white actors to get those roles. But and that certainly makes sense, obviously, in live action. There's no denying that. We moved past that decades ago.
Right.
But in animation, I want to be sensitive to this whole thing. But I think specifically when it comes to this, it's it's tough because I want to believe that animation can be kind of like an even playing ground for actors and creators, because it's not because they don't have to be put on screen, it's because because they're not, their ability to be more creative is expanded upon, right? Or can be, anyways. It gives you the option to.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Does that come off like a jerk? I don't want to come off like a jerk. But
of course not. No, I kind of get what you're saying, but like the reality is, to my knowledge, anyways, not being in the industry, it does seem like things are kind of favored. Most voice actors are white that I'm aware of. Like, most of the big ones, right? So there's that to consider, that representation doesn't exist, and that there aren't those same opportunities for people of different races. And then the other thing is, yes, it's animation, so anything goes. Anybody can play anything, but why not have somebody who's going to sound authentically like the person you're trying to represent? And then it begs the question of how much does the character's race, how important is that to the character? Right. So a character like Apu, that was created as a racial stereotype. Right. Obviously, that's very intrinsic to the character. Yeah. So it makes sense to have somebody of Indian descent speaking with an Indian accent as Apu. That makes sense. One of the things that's tied to this is Alison Brie had a statement about how some of her feelings on playing Asian, Diane in BoJack. Right. Who's like, she's half Vietnamese or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I don't know how big a facet of the character her race was. There are certain episodes where they go through her, her family life and stuff like that. And
she goes there, I think, at one point.
And that's she goes to Vietnam for a while. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously stuff that Alison Brie shouldn't be able to relate to. Right. So having an actor with similar life experience to the character Diane could have made sense there. It's not just about how the character sounds; it's about how they emote and
what they bring to the character,
what they access to reach that emotion, right? So I can see both sides of it. But yeah, like at this point, we're in a situation where equal representation doesn't exist. Right. So why not make efforts to encourage that?
Even the playing field a little bit. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's I think of video games, and I bring up Star Wars at least once an episode. So I'm going to bring up Star Wars here. Because there's no Star Wars news. This
is the one. There's one and only.
Is that in you think or you look to the most recent animated series, but also the video games. Again, I'm thinking of Fallen Order specifically, and their choices in casting and the way that they model the characters is very much after the actor who's voicing them, and that's not by accident. I think, and that makes perfect sense to me. I think, especially in a world where that person might appear in live action at some point, you want that to make sense. So there's kind of that aspect of it. You can kind of blur the lines between animation and reality, and kind of bring those people into the screen, even though they're not physically representing them. Sometimes they are with like mocap and stuff, but so there's that kind of angle to it as well. So I think it's generally a good thing. I just think it's from a purely artistic standpoint, and maybe an idealistic standpoint, you'd like to think that it wouldn't have to be like that you could have anyone play anything. But we're not there yet, I guess. So maybe one day we'll get there. Jeremy, do you have any thoughts on that?
It just makes sense. Like the opportunity isn't equal. This kind of points in that direction, and at the end of the day, I don't think we're going to be really missing out on anything. If the white actor dons the role of a black person or whatever, I don't think it really matters. Right. That they have the opportunity to get that because of what they bring to the table. I don't think that's.
You don't feel like. Sorry, you're losing me, Jeremy. Which side of this what are you falling on?
That it makes sense that these people are stepping away from these roles. Like you don't.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't add or bring anything to the role, in my opinion.
A white man playing a black actor. The other one was what's his name from Family Guy? The character's name, I don't remember. He had his own Cleveland. Yeah, he had his own show for a while. So that was a white guy voicing him. So he's stepping down from that role as well. But I'd say you're right. Like, what are we getting extra? What's better about someone playing, a black man
a white person
playing a black man? It's like nothing really. So it doesn't really make sense. Okay, so a little bit in that same vein, Gone with the Wind has returned to HBO Max with historical context. South Park has arrived on HBO Max, and that one's interesting because South Park doesn't like to pull punches, but there's 5 episodes that were not released with the rest of the run, and they weren't racially charged episodes. They were religiously charged episodes, which I guess that's, where's it just seems like during all this stuff to kind of pull specific episodes like that, you have to realize that the optics you are creating. It just kind of looks kind of gross and a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's like, where are your priorities?
Yeah.
And also, you don't understand South Park if you're going to pull episodes for it being offensive. Like, it's designed to be provocative that way, and if you're going to censor that, it's fruitless. It's pointless.
The joke I saw on the tweet I saw was that I guess we know what one of the episodes is going to be about in season 25.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's the other thing. You don't want to mess with South Park because they'll take it and run with it.
Yeah, right. So in a similar vein to that, this whole thing, which is that Terry Crews revealed that the writing on Brooklyn Nine-Nine season 9 is starting over from scratch in light of the Black Lives Matter movement and police brutality. The quote is, "We are going to make something that will be truly groundbreaking this year. We have an opportunity and we plan to use it."
Awesome.
I've heard some people saying about Brooklyn Nine-Nine that they might completely just do like an Archer season 6 move where they just completely abandon the previous canon and just do crazy random stuff. They're police officers. They're already police officers. They're firefighters this time, or they work in an ER or whatever. Same characters.
Yeah.
But they're just placed in a different world. I think that's an easy out. It sounds to me like they want to try to address this in because they're a show about police officers. They want to use that.
Right.
That being said, this show isn't really, as a comedy, as in the way it's built and created, isn't really in a great position to kind of tackle those more mature themes in as powerful a way as I think they would like to be.
Absolutely, it is. It's well positioned that way. I don't know. Jeremy, do you watch a lot of Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Yeah.
yeah.
You're cutting it out.
Yeah. Maybe I think it may be a bit of a delay, but yeah. We hear you. Let me. You know what, Jeremy? Can you hang up and then dial back in?
Sure.
Okay. So.
No, I think they're in a great position to do it. Like, it's a show about police officers, right? And that is a hot topic right now. That's on everybody's minds. And they've done that kind of stuff in the past. Like, I know that there have been episodes that were addressing racism, forms of racism on the show, right?
There's one specific one.
There's one with, and it heavily involves Terry.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. He takes that obviously very seriously.
So and
as he should.
There's a way to do it while still being a comedy and still being a show that people want to get excited to see and can relax and watch,
right? But
still challenging people in some areas in those episodes. I think it's perfectly situated for that.
I want to agree with you. I just think it's almost too close to the problem, which is that we're talking about systemic issues with in the police departments and these larger problems that are outside of individual cops.
Right.
And they've kind of touched on those things, but they're so close to the issue. Like they are playing police officers.
Right. That
it becomes a really tight rope to walk where, how much are you going to, and I'm not necessarily worried that they're going to alienate their audience, but you run the risk of derailing kind of what the show is to specifically speak to a message, right? With that as your goal, and that's fine. But it's it's strange to do it. I mean, maybe a little bit, and this so late in the run, and again, just being so close to the problem, which can be a good thing, but also I think makes it extremely challenging. I'm not saying that they can't do it. I think it's going to be very hard.
I would argue that it's most important for the people that are closest to it to be advocates and to be the ones that are carrying the torch, right? They have this, like you said in that blurb there, right? They have an opportunity. They're a show about police officers, and there's a lot of discussion about police officers, the validity of police officers, funding stuff.
Right.
Should we defund the police? And there's a lot of, in my mind, valid arguments for that.
Right.
So they have an opportunity to address that stuff without being preachy and still being a comedy. I think it's perfect.
and I hope they're able to do that.
Yeah, it is tough.
Right.
I'm not disagreeing with that, and it's a difficult position to be in. But thus far, that show has been very good and very consistent, more so than most.
I would
contemporary
agree.
comedies.
Sure, I'm a big fan of those creators that like the same guys who did The Good Place, for instance. Like it's not a they're able to create, and something that I've always liked about Brooklyn Nine-Nine is that I always feel happy leaving that show, and I'm not necessarily worried that like, oh well, if I'm not leaving happy, I'm not going to be disappointed. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that their show, I think, has done a really good job of creating, at its core, being a show about a group of friends and how they relate to each other in a workplace, regardless of the fact that they're police officers. And if you really try to lean into the police officer thing, you might lose a little bit of the friendship dynamic stuff that you kind of created, what the show does best.
Not at all, because like the message here is, first of all, it's the show. It's not going to set out to solve systemic racism, right? But it's going to be a piece of the puzzle, and so what on opportunity that it has, and it's up to them how they want to do this. But like, you have the opportunity to show these police officers really as more members of the community, because they all live right in Brooklyn there, right? They all are part of their community.
Right.
They already have kind of showed that within the show.
Even this last season.
So it's like, you lean into that, lean into the type of policing that makes more sense for modern communities, right? And you do have to address racism, and that there's probably going to be dirty cops, and they're already happening within the show. That there are bad cops, and we need to get rid of the bad cops so that we can have the good cops, right? All that kind of stuff. They can address that. I think, I don't know, I see a lot of interesting and really exciting opportunities for that show.
I'm just saying there's a lot of landmines that they've got to navigate. That's all I'm saying.
Sure. Oh, of course.
Jeremy, do you have your back?
Here's something.
I heard a click, and then like a sound of air. We can hear you now.
Gotcha.
Okay, and you can hear me speaking right now, and not in 5 seconds from now.
Correct.
Okay, great. So Jeremy, do you have any thoughts on this? Like, have you watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine? Are you a fan of the show?
Yeah, I've watched it. I'm a pretty big fan. I mean, I can just take his statement as a pretty cool thing, a thing we've never really heard of being done before. But I kind of side with Julian here in terms of I don't know how it's going to play out. To me, it just feels like it'll be different. Because I just don't know what every episode, what are they going to try to show us, that they're battling it? You know what I mean? Systemic racism, and like how and who's going to play the antagonist? I don't know. I don't see how it would play out, especially since you're saying it'd be groundbreaking. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I gotta see it to know what you're really talking about.
For sure. I think it's easy to look at it as like, okay, the police, and they're going to be fighting systemic racism, or like there's a bad guy, but it's more about having the characters discover and develop within the show. So like you can have a character like Amy, for an example, like she can learn something new about the concept of systemic racism, or about anything involved with the movement that isn't as widely known or wasn't beforehand. There are new talking points.
From just watching the show and the characters involved, like they're all such positive people that they don't even. I feel like they don't really ever bring up things of racism ever. Like I don't watch every episode.
They have in it, but it's not. It's certainly not a core element of the show by any means.
Well, no, but it's just they've addressed it, and they've addressed it seriously in at least one episode, to my memory. And it was still a funny episode. Like they can do it both ways, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it's the right idea. And I'm gonna be there. I'll watch it. I want to support these creators. But at this, there's people who are saying, well, if the show is cop propaganda. I don't think that's necessarily true. But that mentality exists for a lot of what we consider procedural cop shows, and it's glorifying police, police work. This does it in a more it's similar to that, because it is a police procedural, but it's a comedy, and it treats itself as a comedy first, and then as a police procedural second, and a serialized one for that matter. So or semi-serialized, I guess. So there's room, there's some wiggle room there to do this. I think it's going to be a tightrope to walk. we'll see. I guess. And like I said, it seems like it might be a while because they're starting over anyway. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that is the heavy stuff of the episode. That I broke up the deaths and the heavy stuff with the Quibi craziness. I don't know if that works.
It's very tasteful.
So changing kind of gears here, Anthony Mackie in a recent interview said that The Falcon and the Winter Soldier will be like a 6-hour Marvel movie. That's the quote. And we talked about earlier about a show being like a movie. No, sorry, it was Deathstroke we were talking about. Again, being turned into a movie, literally. Or in the case of the Snyder Cut, maybe being a movie being turned into a show. The lines are blurred. But is that what we want? I guess the question that I'm asking you guys is that what we want from a Marvel Disney show, a Disney Plus show? Or do we want something that's a little bit more traditional, or what we consider traditional television and less serialized? And maybe even not so much less serialized, but less treated like one big movie, which is sometimes what like the Daredevil show did, which can sometimes work. We can also make it kind of blur the lines between episodes, and you don't know, especially if you're binging it, can be challenging. There's a lot there, but what would you want? With hearing that, is that something that excites you, doesn't excite you? What are you thinking? Jeremy?
Oh, shit. Yeah, to me, when I heard this, I just feel like it's like, yeah, no shit. Like, this is what they already said that these things are going to be. Like, they're mini-series that they're going to shoot all in, like, however many amount of weeks. They're bringing all the movie actors on to do it.
Right.
I feel like we already knew this. Like, I don't think we were like, oh, we're going to get Adventures of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where every episode is like a different week or something. Like, it's going to be, these are 6-hour movies. They're flying the actors down. They're paying them probably
movie salaries,
like, and then this leads to kind of like the Snyder Cut rumor of like the 6-hour expanding this movie and everything they've shot and whatnot. So yeah, I think this is exciting. I think this is the new wave for the superhero genre.
Yeah, I think for this type of show, I think it makes sense. I wanted to ask the question because I know that I think that there was a trend, and there's people talked about like the buzzword for a long time was like it's like a blank hour-long movie, right? And for me, that was sometimes a turnoff. I was like, well, when I want to watch a show, I want to watch a show, not necessarily a part of a movie, right? So I think a lot of shows have gotten a lot better at trying to find that balance, where individual episodes feel
they're always self-contained, right? The episode itself, they usually are, right? The episode itself usually has an ABC, like a 3-act structure story. But then if you look at the season as an aggregate, it also has that same 3-act story over a longer period of time, right? So that's when it's done well, that's what it ends up looking like, and that's beautiful. I think this is perfectly built for that.
I think 6 hours is the right length. If you're doing that, then I guess 6. Because I'm thinking of the Daredevil stuff again, and how many episodes were in those? I don't remember. It was at least 12.
I think it was like 13.
And a 13-hour movie is a long movie.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Well, I don't know, because I think we would all agree, Jeremy. I think our critiques when we were watching those Netflix shows was they were too long. There's too many episodes, and that the back half of those shows, the back half of those seasons, was the weakest part. So I mean, it seems to me like this dialing in at 6 hours is maybe like the right sweet spot.
Right, and you can even look at like Watchmen, which we unanimously agree is the best television last year.
We can all agree. Yeah, I would guess I would agree. And in fact, it's better now.
Right, like you could even see like that's even possible to have only 6 episodes. There's only was there 9, right?
Yeah.
Like there were certain episodes that were kind of not on the right path or whatever, just kind of showcasing a perspective of one particular character or whatever. So, and yeah, like we've always complained about length, and I think 6 hours is pretty easy to digest with this high quality of production too. Like The Mandalorian and whatnot. Even that one lost some episodes.
I would disagree.
Of course, but we're not talking about Star Wars anymore in this episode. We already did it once,
right?
So
I don't have against it. Okay, so different superhero show. Stargirl has been renewed for a 2nd season. The twist is It's not coming back. You like my, by the way, like my setting up stories and then dropping the twist. That's my new thing I'm doing now. The twist is it's not coming back to DC Universe, which is where it premiered. It'll be coming to CW next year. So this is coming off the heels of Harley Quinn and Doom Patrol coming to, or in some cases with Doom Patrol already on HBO Max. That only leaves Young Justice and Titans, which are both. I'm not sure if Titans is in production. I don't know what the production situation is for Young Justice either. But there certainly isn't a new season coming out right away for either of them. Being the only holdout like original series or standalone series that are just on DC Universe. Which begs the question: what is the future for DC Universe as a streaming service?
Looking good.
Every streaming service needs original content. Why not just blend or fuse DC Universe into HBO Max? Which I think this is, by the way, something I think we talked about as soon as they announced HBO Max.
Right.
Jeremy, we don't even have access to HBO or to DC Universe up here in Canada.
No,
so
it just comes to Netflix later, basically.
Yeah. So. Do you think it's doomed? I think it's doomed. I liked the idea. It was an idea that we had a long time ago. It's like, how cool would that be? But just move it to HBO Max. Like, just get it.
If that one is the successful streaming service,
right.
Have all your content in one spot.
Yeah.
Don't be a CBS All Access.
Because you look at Disney Plus, right? It's the same thing once it gets all of this DC Universe stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, I think of Disney Plus specifically. You have the Marvel section, the Star Wars section, and like all these different things. Like you could just have a DC section of HBO Max, right?
But if
and a Looney Tunes section.
Streaming service, do you think that would be successful?
I think it would be as successful as the DC Universe. No, it would
be more successful just because it has all the Marvel movies
more
that are
recent
so
content.
Big right now, right?
Yeah.
So they probably had a better shot at it, but it just makes more sense to have it all in one spot.
Why would you pay a premium subscription service just to subscribe to just only DC stuff? You know what I mean? But like it's not always producing content or like a wide variety of content.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
the one wrinkle there is that DC Universe, I think, includes some type of comics subscription.
That was definitely part of it.
But like again, that doesn't seem like that would be that hard to implement as a part of HBO Max. Like you have the infrastructure built.
Right.
I think it's just a matter of time, and I think I saw some people speculating that it might be like there might be some like holdover licensing deals and agreements and stuff because, which is weird because they own all that stuff, but who knows? There's a lot of complications. But like if you go and look at the DC section of HBO Max right now, it's pretty barren. There's not a lot of movies there. There's not a lot of shows there. All that stuff is all on DC Universe still, especially the legacy stuff, especially. So just kill it already. Like put it out of its misery. Like if they announce it, like Harley Quinn is, by the way, it's being critically raved about, and part of the reason it's going to HBO Max is because they wanted to get more eyes. It was not getting enough eyeballs at DC Universe, and they're thinking this is a show that we know is good, and we want people to see it.
It's the same with Stargirl, right? Like why have it on that island by itself,
right?
And no one can tap into it.
Which I hear, by the way, Stargirl is good. I haven't seen it. It's not DC Universe.
4 or 5 episodes.
And this is the Jeff Johns show, right? That's
and Greg Berlanti, but mostly Jeff Johns, I guess. But I guess it's kind of going back to Greg Berlanti,
right?
Really.
His backyard,
It was like in a way for Jeff Johns to create something to kind of get it into the mainstream.
Right.
Yeah. But I think it's there's some pretty strong aspects to it. It definitely feels a bit better produced.
CWE?
A bit better produced than the CW stuff, but still some of those classic tropes. Very cheesy, but I guess that's to lend towards the younger audience.
Teenagers, yeah.
But there are some dark things that happen and some serious subject matters that happen. So it's a decent blend of everything that like a family at dinner can watch or something. Like I don't know. It's a cool adventure show.
Okay. I will put it on my list for when its first season's done, because I think it's halfway through its first season right now. Okay, so speaking of HBO Max, it's in need of original content. Speaking of original content, so there is a trailer for an original series called An American Pickle, and it stars Seth Rogen playing against himself as a man who's pickled for 100 years and his great-grandson. Dan watched the trailer before we started recording. I saw it a couple of days ago. I think it looks pretty good, and against all odds.
It's certainly, and here's the thing. I'm happy to see this. I'm excited for the movie or the show. I guess I didn't realize it was a show. I assumed it was a movie. It's certainly original.
Yeah.
In its conception, this isn't part 2 of anything or a remake of anything.
It's not some recognizable IP.
It feels refreshing in that sense. I'm actually very excited for this.
And I think it looks like it's dealing with some
there's some cultural issues and generational issues. So
it's clearly not interested in just being a wacky comedy, which is good. And I think it shows Seth Rogen kind of growing a lot as a creator, a little bit, but not losing touch with his roots, because this is a silly concept. But I think it works based on the trailer. So the way it starts with is in old country of Spunsk or whatever it says.
Right.
He's I'm a ditch digger, and it's which is a pretty good job, and goes that, where it kind of puts you in a expectation and pulls the rug out. I think it's it looks really fun. Jeremy, did you watch the trailer for it? No. Okay. Meanwhile, over another streaming service, because that's all that there is in streaming, it's just streaming services, right? Amazon Prime, which we all have, right? So this is going to be interesting. We're learning that the first series from the creators of Westworld, so Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan, they signed a big deal. I think we talked about this on the show, with Amazon Prime. They are going to be doing a show based on Fallout, the video game. I've never played a Fallout game, but here's the statement from Nolan and Joy, just before I'll get your impressions. I know you have. Fallout is one of the greatest game series of all time. Each chapter of this insanely imaginative story has cost us countless hours we could have spent with family and friends. So we're incredibly excited to partner with Todd Howard and the rest of the brilliant lunatics at Bethesda to bring the massive, subversive, and darkly funny universe to life with Amazon Studios. So it seems like it's kind of a good IP to make a show out of, because it's really not about anything, right?
It's very open-ended.
Yeah.
Fallout is literally you generate a character and you come out of a Fallout shelter into right. a world,
right.
And then you just deal with a bunch of crazy, cool sci-fi post-apocalyptic concepts, right? There's everything from giant bugs to nuclear war to robots. It's all over the place, right? So there's definitely, it's open-ended. There's lots of room to create.
Jeremy, we can, whatever you're eating is super loud. Yeah, it is. Is it out of a box?
Bag.
Oh, okay. All right. Can you?
What do you eat out of a? Well, I guess chips.
Chips are out of a bag. Yeah. French fries. You get French fries in a bag.
Sometimes. It doesn't sound like that.
Yeah, let's go with that. Okay. Well, anyway, just mute yourself when you're not talking. Okay. Is it interesting? Is it interesting at all that it's coming from the Westworld creators?
I would say it interests me more so because it's coming from them than just the fact, just the concept of a Fallout series.
Right.
I think that adds a nice layer to it, because they're accomplished creators, and they'll add something to it where it won't just be that silly tongue-in-cheek Fallout. It's a fun game and it's fun to dip your toe in, but
right.
This will have a bit more of a narrative structure, I would imagine.
you would hope.
And so I'm very excited actually to see what they can do with it.
Do you think that people are ready for a new post-apocalyptic show?
Not right now, because it feels like things are getting close to a real life apocalypse.
Right. But maybe by the time it comes out,
it's not that bad yet. But it feels that it's easy to feel that way.
Right.
So
there's something to be said about the idea of Fallout show production being canceled by the actual apocalypse.
Yeah, there'd be some
one of
the actual definition of irony there. But let's not hope for that.
That's right. Yeah.
No. It's. I want to see what can be done. I don't think that people are going to be too exhausted from real life stresses to be disinterested in an apocalyptic show.
Right. Okay.
If anything, it might help you exercise some of those things that you're keeping down.
Sure. Jeremy, I don't know if you've played a Fallout game or not. Do you like the idea of a Fallout show? Is that more interesting to you?
Yeah,
Less interesting?
I've never played a game, but definitely a show set in that world is way more interesting to me.
Yeah.
yeah, I think it could be fantastic, especially with these people creating the series or writing it. I guess Jonathan Nolan.
they both write. I love the kind of like how would you say it, like future 50s feel that the Fallout has,
Right.
which I think is
the logo might be one of the best logos ever, or like the
the
little,
Pip-Boy or whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Super cool.
I like this idea of, imagine if the world was frozen in the 50s and then emerged again today, and but like there's also like this this kind of like steampunk element to it, where
There's
like
a lot of that.
which is, it seems really cool. So it has like it's funny because it reminds me a little bit of like that type of setting. It reminds me a little bit of BioShock, and I just feel like a BioShock show would be so cool, or movie. Would be so cool. I think maybe we're getting closer to it all the time, but that is a story that I feel like is trapped in a medium that a lot of people have played and a lot of people have seen, but if it could be exposed to like a much larger audience in a much more accessible manner, would be, I think, worthwhile. It's hard to explain Fallout, or it's not that hard to explain Fallout. Fallout's easy to explain. BioShock, less easy to explain to people who've never played games before, or just see them from afar and don't really care to get involved. It seems like maybe we're reaching kind of that point where we can start creating shows and movies around games because the worlds are more fleshed out instead of just being based on like a character, or trying to strictly follow some sort of narrative. R.I.P. the Uncharted movie, which I assume will never come out. For instance,
Wasn't meant to be.
That's a movie that I don't think needs to be a movie, which is kind of funny because the game's basically already one. But that's a conversation we can save for another time. So also on Amazon Prime, a show that I think we all really enjoyed, The Boys, announced that they'll be returning on September 4th. So that's coming back. The first 3 episodes will be available to stream on day 1, before moving to a weekly model with an episode coming out every Friday through to October 9th. So a nice blend, I think, of the 2 models that we talk about all the time. So you can stream the first 3, kind of really get in there, and then week to week kind of discuss the story as it goes and builds. That seems exciting. I can't wait for that. 2 new seasons of Beavis and Butthead are coming to Comedy Central. Series creator Mike Judge will return to write and produce. Before my time. I think, and so I don't really get why people like that show so much, but I know people do, so that's for them.
It was one of those shows. When we were, or for me specifically, when I was younger, it was like one of those shows I wasn't allowed to watch.
Right.
It's like it's a cartoon, but it's not really for kids or anything. So I'm not too familiar.
Right. In a similar vein, HBO has renewed Curb Your Enthusiasm for an 11th season. And Larry David remarked, "Believe me, I'm as upset as you are. One day I can only hope that HBO will come to their senses and grant me the cancellation I so richly deserve." Which is pretty great. I've never seen a lot of Curb, but I know it's loved by basically.
It's an amazing show. It's incredible. I don't know that you would love it, June, because a lot of it is that sort of awkward, like person being put in an awkward situation type humor. But no, I think it's a fantastic show.
Okay. So you're excited about this? Have you seen all of Curb?
Not all of it, but it's one of those things that you can pick up at any time, and like you know enough about him as a character, because it's really all the show is like him trying to live his life, and then something inconveniences him. Some sort of thing happens and it's like
and he has to do it.
But it's all about how people relate to each other, sort of like socially. So it's like there's obviously a simpler solution to all of these problems, but he makes it more complicated with his neuroses. It's really cool.
All right. And then on the other end of the spectrum, Netflix is canceling or ending Ozark with season 4. So I know that's another show people really like.
Yeah.
So that is ending with season 4. I know there's been some criticisms of Netflix about how quickly it ends its shows. They're not really letting them breathe and come into their own before they're canceled.
Right.
I think they called it the 3 seasons and a cancellation curse or something like that. Because, and this idea is that specifically from a writing perspective, you gather these writers together, they kind of find their voice around the second half of season 2, and then by the end of season 4 the show's over, they're dispersed to the wind and have to be like, you know, it's like, so you can't, it's hard for you to kind of like grow, even especially as a young writer, you don't have enough time to like grow into or like ready to go up through the ranks through a show. You're just constantly being stuck at that same peg because you literally don't have enough time at one show to go up through the ranks. That's a bit meta for what we're talking about here, but like I think that's interesting with that show, which I've never seen, by the way, but everyone talks about it.
I've heard great things. I've never seen an episode of Ozark myself.
Yeah. Okay. And these are just two miscellaneous things. Marvel has acquired the comic book rights to Alien and Predator. I know that I think they were IDW for a long time, but it makes sense because I think Disney now owns Alien for sure.
Yeah.
I think Predator, is that a Fox property?
I think, yeah, that sounds right. Jeremy?
I don't know.
21st Century Fox. I feel like I've seen that logo in front of the Predator movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
So anyway, that makes sense. They'll be starting doing comic runs on that right away. And then George R. R. Martin announced on Twitter that he is hard at work on Game of Thrones sequel book Winds of Winter.
Oh, baby.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
I need it to happen. You
But
guys.
it will not be releasing until at least 2021.
Of course.
Is it the last
Yeah.
book or something?
No,
It's the
not.
second last book.
So,
So he was talking. His Twitter post was like about how like, man, this whole COVID thing is really giving me cabin fever, but it's made me forced me to write. That being
you
said,
gotta just finish the book for him.
Dan just finished them for him.
I'll work on it.
Just get right on that. I just think I thought it was a really funny like 1-2 punch because it came in two separate tweets where it was like George R. R. Martin says he's working on Winds of Winter, and then the other one says Winds of Winter won't come out until at least 2021,
Yeah.
which is kind of like a slap in the face to. It's been so long.
It's been a long time, but it's like you want it to be done right. You don't want to rush these things.
How much do you think the show has influenced his?
That's the biggest challenge, and I think that's probably what's impeding it at this point. Is that the show was so great for so long, and then really bad right at the end, and you know the public perception of Game of Thrones
Right.
changed. There was always pressure on him, but now it's a different type of pressure. Now it's people always were pressuring him to just finish it. You know, we need to get the story out. We need to experience this. Now there's an added layer of pressure because he has to redeem season 8. Right?
Right.
He has to not only release the books and maintain his narrative, but also make it keep it on that same caliber that the other books have been.
Right.
Which I have complete faith that he will. You know, he doesn't seem like the type to let the show affect his writing too much.
Right.
There aren't very many examples of that happening. You know, within the books that have been written after the show. So we'll see, but I still do have full faith.
I find it interesting that specific kind of like reading of it, finding that to be a very interesting reflection of the show itself, because when the creators came on to make Game of Thrones, they came on to adapt a book series.
Yep.
Right? And then they got about halfway through production of the series and realized that they now had to create whole cloth. Maybe not entirely whole cloth, but they had to take ideas, concepts that were given to them by George R. R. Martin and flush them out and create an ending on their own, which is not what they signed up to do.
With his help,
Right.
he was consulting for a bit less so in
Right.
the later seasons.
Which arguably was when they probably needed him most.
Yeah, I would say so. And then here's the challenge for him as
Right.
an author and as the creator of it. Like, how much do you really want to give away to the show, or do you not want to tell the story within your book?
Well, but then it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Like you can't.
I bet you he will.
Well, it seems crazy. It's like, hey, adapt my books, but also I'm gonna kneecap you at the end.
Well, obviously that wasn't the plan.
But
That was
like
nobody's
but
plan.
if his thought is at the end, I'm not going to give you what I'm actually planning on doing. That seems like cruel to the creators of the people. By the way, that are paying you to make this show. It's like that's kind of like a fuck you, a little bit.
To who?
To the people, the watchers of the show, the creators of the show. Everyone involved in the show.
But do you not think that the reciprocal would be a slap in the face to book fans?
Well, no, not really, because they have the option to not watch it if they don't want to, right? I mean, like, it's not a slap in the face to book fans because you would argue that the second he sold the rights to the show was a slap in the face.
I think a lot of
book
people would
fans.
argue that. Yeah.
But that's where that happens, not at the end where he decides to kneecap them. That would
which
we're
by the way,
speculating.
Nobody ever said
Right. We don't know, but you raised an idea, and I'm like kind of like that seems crazy to me.
All right. Anyways,
Jeremy, what do you even care at this point?
Well, I want to see what Dan thinks once he reads the book. If he's brought back into it, if he's conflicted while reading it, and knowing where the character's gonna go in a weird sense.
Right.
Maybe
it's so hard to talk about.
Do you feel? I feel like this is. I'm trying to put myself in your headspace for a second. Do you feel like what's frustrating about this the most to you is that you could never detach what you know of the show from while you're reading the book and be able to trust your own reactions to those things that are happening in that book that are different than what's happening in the show?
The books are so, at this point, like vastly different from the show. And I've read a few sample chapters of Winds of Winter, and like there's just, because this show condensed so much and got rid of so many plot lines toward, like even as early as like season 5, they started doing that, right? Where people just got like surprise stabbed at the beginning of the episode and they never like, like, okay, yeah, don't think too hard about Dorne and Ariahota. Don't think too much about Roose Bolton,
right?
Or Asha. So because they made all those choices to condense the show to make it, I guess, more palatable for viewers, it's created a completely different story. So, like, yes, some of the larger, like, I'm sure what ends up happening with Daenerys and Jon is likely going to happen in some form within the books, but it's going to be so different that reading the books is still going to be a brand new experience. And having read those sample chapters and even reading book 5, I never really found that the show pervaded it too much.
Interesting. Okay. So that basically does it. I just want to mention what we've been watching just super quick. So I did watch Hamilton on Disney Plus. I'm not going to get into it a lot here because I am looking to find someone to talk about this with on the show more in depth. This is Lin-Manuel Miranda's Broadway musical, kind of cultural phenomenon. It was brought to Disney Plus, which is kind of a surprise. It's not something that happens very often. Often stage plays don't translate very well to the screen, especially when they're just a recording of the stage play. But I was, and by the way, not just to preface this, not a fan generally of musicals. I think the only musical I really enjoyed was La La Land, and the least exciting part of that to me was the show tunes. It was the jazz that I liked and the characters, and it was. There's not that as much singing in that as you might think for a musical. I not particularly I don't really love have a big affection for the founding fathers of the United States or American history. It's interesting. There was a animated show on school on PBS that was all about that for some reason. I remember watching a lot, but that's neither here nor there. Basically, if you don't know, it's a hip-hop musical, and most people know, but it's a hip-hop musical about Alexander Hamilton and the founding fathers of the United States. And it is absolutely amazing. I can't express enough how good it is. And I went in knowing that everyone thought it was the best thing ever, and my expectations were super high, right? And it managed to meet them and exceed them. It's long. I mean, stage plays are generally long. It's about 3.5 hours. It still might be shorter than The Irishman, but it's very long. And
there's an intermission.
There is an intermission, so you can a distinct delineating line.
Refill your snacks.
Exactly. They only give the intermission in the show is 1 minute. They give you 1 minute to get you can pause it obviously.
Oh, that's the thing.
Yeah. And then so there's no actual I guess lyrical lines. It's all it's all music. All music in some form, right? It's whether it's a rap battle or some of it's a bit more traditional in its in some of its songs, but everything kind of hits everything it's asking you to think about or to feel. It's able to make you feel those things in a way that through a medium that it does not normally work for me. It moved me to tears. I think it's brilliantly performed. It looks super great in 4K. I would encourage you, even if it doesn't seem like something that you would like, give it a shot. Even just watch the first half, and if you're not liking it, obviously just turn it off. But give it a shot. It's really good, and it's essentially free if you already have Disney Plus. So that, and I watched Moonrise Kingdom, which was a really weird Wes Anderson movie, even for Wes Anderson.
So it's just a Wes Anderson.
Well, I think even for Wes Anderson, it was strange. I think they do some strange choices. Movie from 2012. It's about teenagers, or not even preteens, at 12 years old, and like they deal with some interesting themes about like feeling like you're an outsider and like finding someone who can relate to you, and then it was like, it's me and you against the world kind of mentality, but it's all very light and fluffy, as Wes Anderson movies are. Yeah. But they just do some weird. There's some weird choices in it, and I don't think it's one of his stronger movies. I know people really love it. I just think I didn't have that feeling. So those are what I've seen lately. Have you guys seen anything? Watched anything? I know you've played some cool video game, Dan.
I've been really into a new game. Yeah, we don't need to talk about it here. This isn't one of our game shows, but the game is called Stellaris, and it's like a really rich, deep RTS. Yeah, I'm really into right now.
It's the sci-fi stuff. Dan's doing sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, I'm usually doing some sort of sci-fi stuff.
Is there anything else you've seen or watched outside of that?
I've been doing just that.
Okay.
Started rereading Dune in anticipation of
right.
of the movies.
That may or may never come.
See what happens. But
yeah. Jeremy, have you watched anything? Played anything? Or you been playing Last of Us?
Yeah, I'm still playing Last of Us. Still haven't beat it yet. Still got a little bit to go.
Okay. Good to know.
They brought the 64 out and just playing
okay.
some classics with the nephews and niece.
Nice. Like what? Mario Tennis?
GoldenEye, Mario Tennis.
GoldenEye, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. And then I watched Batman Begins last night.
Oh, really? Interesting choice.
Well, Taryn picked.
You're like...
Taryn picked. She's never seen it before. So.
Oh, okay. So you guys gonna do the whole trilogy now?
Yeah, she wants to watch the next one. So.
Okay. And then you're just gonna stop there? Well, you gotta see it through.
Yeah.
If you have to see, like, again, one of those things was like, maybe the movie's not great, but that Bane performance,
it's good.
Worth it.
Yeah.
You know?
And the movie isn't that bad.
It's not great. I think it's
like it's one of those things, like there's a couple moments that are going to stick out that kind of ruin the movie for you.
Yeah.
But like the way they do the Batman Bane thing, or the fight between Batman and Bane,
that's
even
cool.
that on its own.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Catwoman's really cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of positive things in that movie.
The ending I would argue would not be one of them, but it's tough. That's a hard thing to do. Endings are hard, as I think we've seen.
Speaking of,
right. Yeah, we're ending the show.
It's the end of the show.
Yeah, it's the end of the show. So, please, if you first thing, go watch Hamilton. Second thing, subscribe.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah, guys. Subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/TowerBabbleCast. We're gonna be watching Boiler Room this month. That'll be fun. I'm gonna get Tron Legacy in there somewhere. You guys look forward to that. and it's just been a good time. It helps support the show, especially if you like the show. It means a lot to us. So that is appreciated. I actually want to make sure. I think we had at least one new subscriber. So Dan, can you vamp for a second while
I think now is the best time for this.
The
the other thing is, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast. Everything is Tower Babblecast. Just Google that, you'll find it. TowerBabblePodcast@gmail.com is the email.
Okay, I got them. So we have 2 new subscribers in Josh. Do you think it's Miles or Mills? It's Miles.
It's the word Miles.
Okay. And then Sean Tennyson as well, at $5 a month. So a big thank you to you guys. Much appreciated. And then Jesse Graves, he's bumped his subscription up to 20, and that's a huge thing for us. So again, a longtime friend of the show, Jesse. So thank you again. We'll be in touch for doing some other stuff as well in the future. So like you said, Twitter @TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, and we'll be back with a show about The Last of Us very soon, I think, and more shortly. Talk to you then.
See ya.
That was a long one.